Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Friday, we've got 2 new Word Balloons for you. I hope you'll listen to the Carl Kiesel interview that I did talking about his new character, Impossible Jones. Grin and Gritty, a brand new graphic novel that he's got a Kickstarter campaign with David Hahn for. And, yeah, I know, terrible grammar. I'm sorry. Can't help it. It's Friday morning. I'm bleary-eyed and bleary-headed. But clear-headed when I talked last night to Josh Williamson about The Flash and Batman Superman, 2 of his big DC titles that are happening this year. Of course, he's been doing The Flash for several years now. And, man, over 70 issues. In fact, he's ahead of schedule. We talk about Flash Year 1 and what's going on there. We're about halfway through that story, but also he's got big plans for Batman and Superman starting in August, and a lot has happened to The Flash since DC Rebirth, and a lot to his characters around him, like Wally West and Iris and Wallace West. All of that stuff is involved, and we talk about all that stuff, plus our mutual love for The Flash going back years. And it's, you know, Josh is younger than me, but he certainly is a fan of some of the great classic runs that I grew up with. And as I say in the conversation, Cary Bates, to me, is the unsung DC Bronze Age writer. He was so instrumental and wrote so many Flash stories. And we talk a lot about the trial of the Flash and other things significant on the Cary Bates Flash run. But then we get into a lot of stories that Josh has been doing as well with the Flash, and future plans for Batman and Superman. The Batman Who Laughs is involved in Josh's plans for Batman Superman, and it's part of DC's bigger story that is going on with the Year of the Villain and the Source Wall breaking down, the things that other writers at DC like Scott Snyder is exploring in Justice League, and certainly now writing Batman Superman that kind of dovetails into what Tom and King is doing with Batman and what Brian Bendis is doing with Superman. And Josh is right there in the writer's room pitching what he wants to do with the Flash. Flash is a very significant character in the DC Rebirth era, and it's an interesting time, and I'm glad to spend this time with Josh talking about his plans. Flash Facts and Batman Superman with Josh Williamson on today's Word Balloon. It's brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you, League, for your great support via Patreon, helping me out with Word Balloon, helping keep the lights on, and helping me in this difficult 2019 that, an infection kind of started the year off on the wrong foot, literally. But that foot is healing, and everything is going well. And I appreciate all the support that I got and all the well wishes from the listeners, and also the support via Word Balloon sponsorships at Patreon. If you want to subscribe to Word Balloon, do you think Word Balloon is worth $1 a month? Do you think it's worth the price of a comic? If you enjoy the entertainment you get here, I hope you'll consider supporting Word Balloon via Patreon at patreon.com/wordballoon, or you can click on the Patreon ad at wordballoon.com. That will take you right to our Patreon page. Thank you again for your great support, League of Word Balloon listeners. This Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. Lots of great books are coming out of Aftershock Comics this year, and they have been for a while now. Marguerite Bennett's Animosity, things like Jimmy's Bastards and A Walk Through Hell from Garth Ennis, some of my favorites. Dark Ark from Cullen Bunn and Juan Doe, and Baby Teeth from Donny Cates. There are new books on the way, and some of them are really exciting. Joe Pruitt, who has always proven himself, whether it's been Excalibur or Desperado, well, he's back with a new horror anthology called Shock. Cullen Bunn has a new title to go alongside the great work he's been doing on Brothers Dracul and Dark Ark. It's Knights Temporal. So obviously there's a little time travel going on, and I love the idea of a temporal knight, a Templar knight being a temporal knight. We'll see what happens with that. Chris Sabella's, really enjoy his work for a long time. He's got a new series that just started called Trustfall. And Matthew Klickstein's You Are Obsolete. Some of the great titles that are coming in the weeks and days ahead. They cut across genres to take readers far beyond their comfort zones. Now, in the weeks ahead, we'll have conversations with some of these creators about these books. But you don't have to wait to find out what's going on. Go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on these books to order through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Now, let's get into our conversation. Long time coming with Josh Williamson on Word Balloon. Josh Williamson, welcome to Word Balloon. Long time coming, as we were just discussing off the air, but welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. Like we were saying, we talked about this like 2 years ago, I think, and then we just never got around to doing it.
It's true,
man. Never figured it out.
Well, and I know too. Around the button was the button 2 years ago.
Yeah, almost 2 years ago.
Holy shit! Yeah. So there you go.
Ago.
Yeah.
I know. I forget sometimes. Like something will come up and I'll be like, "Wait, when was that?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that was over 2 years ago."
Well, and to be honest, I meant to talk to you years earlier when you were doing Captain Midnight.
Oh yeah, right on. I really enjoyed Captain. I learned a lot working on Captain Midnight about like long form superhero stuff and doing that kind of superhero story. I learned a lot from doing that one.
You know, I'm a huge fan of the character because he's a Chicago creation. You know, he was a Chicago kids radio show for Ovaltine. I don't even know.
I know all about the Ovaltine stuff.
Exactly.
It is out of my head now as much. I really liked Captain Midnight before, but it was like you like something in the abstract. Like you like. It was one of those things where I knew who Captain Midnight was beforehand, and I liked him. I knew who he was. I knew the radio shows. But I didn't like know it the way that I know it now.
Sure.
Or I did when I was working on it, because like when I got the job, then you start listening to radio shows, you start doing research and learning all this stuff, and really digging deep into it. And then the Ovaltine stuff and all of like the decoder ring, and all of that stuff. But it's funny, a lot of that stuff's out of my head now. It's that was that was
a long time ago, man. 9 years ago, 8 years ago.
When did I get that job? I started working on that in 2012. I think the first time it came up was 2011. I worked on it in 2012 to 2000. I'm saying 2014 2014. I think maybe a tad bit into 15. I think issue 1 came out in June of 2013. Yeah, so it was a little bit ago.
Yeah.
But it's you just start, once you finish a project off, you jump onto something else. And like that time period is wild because it was like I was doing Captain Midnight, Nailbiter, Ghosted, Birthright, RoboCop, and Predator at the same time. and talking to Marvel. And I think I did like a mini at Marvel or some one-shots. On top of like developing other stuff and talking and pitching and like we were saying earlier, going to conventions, I was doing a lot, and a lot of that has been like, aside from Nailbiter and Birthright and Ghost of the stuff that was mine, that was created around, those things are still in my head. But I think a lot of that stuff I just kind of like shoved into the back recesses of my mind at this point, because then it was like once I wrapped all of that up, all those things kind of ended around the same time or within a few months of each other. Then I was doing The Flash, like it all, and that was something that I wanted to be working on for a really long time, and I had that stuff in my head since I was a kid. So a lot of that stuff just got put in the back, and then I was full DC for a while, just still am.
I can hear you. I understand what you're saying, and I liked specifically with Captain Midnight that idea of taking him from the 40s and kind of giving the Captain America spin on him, and bringing him to the modern era and everything. And that's. He's that kind. He was that kind of character. He'd be perfect for that kind of story. He wasn't that kind of character.
That was all Mike Richardson too. Yeah. He loved that character. He really liked that character a lot, and he wanted to do a lot with him. And so I had a lot of meetings with Mike Richardson about that character, which was good because it was like, it's one thing when you like. There's only so much you can get about the fandom of a character. Even from reading the stuff about the character, like I said, listening to some of the radio shows, it's different to actually like sit down and talk to somebody who is a fan of that thing. And he was such a big fan of that character that we had a lot of conversations about that. So that was the big thing he wanted, was to move it into present day and then do a bunch of stuff with that character. And we had this big mega story we were building, because I wasn't alone in that. It was me and Kelly Sue.
Right, she was doing, it was really like Dark Horse's superhero initiative. Go on, yeah.
Yeah, she was doing Ghost.
That's right.
Who was doing the other book? I think it was Dwayne, but I don't remember.
Dwayne Swarzynski? Which Dwayne?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he did X.
Sure, that's right,
and,
yes.
Josh Fialkov did one of the spin-off books. But yeah, man, it's so weird. Like, I've never talked about this with other creators who've done like a lot of projects, like what they remember and what they don't. But yeah, that was a good like 2.5 years of my life that I was really happy with too. And this sounds really silly.
No, it was cool. It was good.
I was really happy with that stuff. I learned a lot from it, and I really enjoyed writing it. And I had a lot of fun with those characters. Like I was able to build a kind of mythology within it.
Yes.
And watch the stuff. And then also it was a regular paycheck at the same time.
Sure, absolutely, man.
I went from, I started self-publishing stuff in the early 2000s, and I think I got my first paid job, first paid job, I think was 2008.
Okay.
So I had 8 years of not getting paid, realistically.
I'm with you, yeah.
So it was like, to go from that, and then within a good amount of, a few years, 2008, 2012, was like a 4-year time span. I had irregular work, but good work and stuff that was good and moved along. I did a lot of stuff for DC, but it was always, it wasn't consistent. Everything was sporadic. And then I think that's probably the longest, most consistent comic job I had at the time. That was the beginning of me having something like that. Because it was I did Voodoo, I did Uncharted, I did a few little things here and there, but that was the first time where it was it was 2 years of your life where it's one project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And those checks were coming in regularly. And I, like most people, have realized I work better when I'm not worried about money.
Sure. Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Well, yeah, if I'm stressed out about stuff, the work definitely suffers. If I'm not stressed out about things and I'm able to kind of find kind of peace, I guess, then the work I think is better.
That's cool.
But it's been a while since I've been stressed out about that kind of thing. But it's sometimes the best stuff that I think I've written, or the things that I was the most happy with, I came up with not at my computer. I was doing something else. There's a scene in Flash that I came up with. It's in the Rebirth issue. It's in the first one. Okay. And I was doing the dishes. No, I'm sorry, I was cooking. I was cooking on a Saturday morning. I was just cooking eggs on a Saturday morning, and all of a sudden this scene between Barry and his dad just kind of clicked into my head, and I ran upstairs and I wrote it. And I remember I turned that in. That was a scene that Jeff Johns and DC really, that was the one, not to say won them over, but that was the one they were yes, you can do this. Because I was already writing at that point. I think I had written, because I wrote out of order. I wrote the first few issues first, and I had to go back and write the Rebirth issue.
Oh, interesting.
And, just because of scheduling. It was just a scheduling thing. And so I had written a couple issues of it, and everyone was happy with it. But you can tell there's when people are happy with something, and all of a sudden you read something, and you can tell they're very happy with it.
Sure.
That was the first time I think they were really happy with it. And, but I could tell. So I'm always trying to find that, that rhythm, that kind of a zone, I guess, with writing where I can, it's weird. I don't know how to explain it. It's just a Zen moment where you suddenly, things click in place.
Well, yeah, Mike, Elaine May, Mike Nichols. Mike Nichols, before he passed away, I remember seeing his Actors Studio interview, and he talked about how your mind needs to be relaxed for the ideas to kind of creep in. And he said, sometimes it may seem like a writer's just, screwing around and not really working, but it's no, or Brian would always talk Bendis about, coming up with ideas when he was bike riding or whatever. And yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I just pitched for a radio job, and all of a sudden, initially thinking, I'm not cut out for this. And then, yeah, like you said, your brain's relaxed, and it's oh, wait a minute, how about this idea? How about that idea? So then I'm something, I'm sending a resume to these guys. I have an idea here. So
today I was working on an issue of Flash. I was doing the dialogue. So the way Howard Porter and I did Flash number 1, it's a hybrid between a full script and a plot first.
Okay.
And most of it's because Howard and I just know each other really well, and we talk on the phone, and he, there's no surprises. I tell him what's coming. I pitch him the issue first. So in some places it's really loose, some places it's detailed. It just depends on the scene. 75 was a little bit of both, and so that's the ending. It was the last issue of the year 1 storyline. And so the art's finished, so I have to go through and finalize the dialogue.
Sure, yeah.
And I was having a problem with it, so today I was I knew how many lines, I knew the scenes I needed, I knew what I needed to write up, so I went and took a walk. Just took a walk down to the grocery store and around and came back. And what I do is I put my headphones on and I will record myself talking to myself, and I'll talk about the character's feelings. This sounds really silly, but this is what it is.
No, I want to hear. This is great.
what is Barry feeling in this moment? What is the turtle feeling? What is the turtle angry about? What is Barry angry about? And just kind of, trying to figure out lines of dialogue and work through some things. And Bendis actually told me a version of this when I was in his class, where it was a bonus project. It was for extra credit.
Okay.
Where we had done it was our genre assignments, and which you pick a genre, write a short, like an 8-pager with that genre.
Okay.
And but he said that the bonus project was to take 2 characters from that genre project and just write them talking to each other. No pounders, going to just dialogue back and forth, just the rhythm.
Yep.
And I did that, and it kind of taught me about that idea of like, and you don't even use it. Like, you end up using like 2 or 3 lines out of that, but you create that rhythm, and you might find something that's worth something, right?
Sure.
And so what I'll do a lot of times is I'll go for walks or go for a drive or whatever, and I'll record myself talking to myself. So like, there's an issue with the Flash where like Eobard Thawne is pissed at Barry, and so I have this recording of myself like as Eobard yelling at Barry. And I'm like hitting my steering wheel because I was so mad at Barry. But so as I was walking, and I ended up coming home, and what I do is then I listen to it again, and I type up whatever I think is good. And I had too much.
Okay.
I had way too much. I spent a big part of the day just editing it down, finding this, taking this, going through, and just chipping away at it. But it was like I was sitting here at my computer, and I was struggling to get the dialogue to roll. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just taking that walk and talking to myself, and I don't know if it's getting in a character or whatever. Yeah, I ended up getting too many lines of dialogue that I had to basically like throw a bunch of them away. But yeah, just trying to find that ability to kind of, I don't know, get in the zone, like you were saying, like you said, ride the bike and stuff. Yeah.
No, that's great, and I have heard him talk about throwing 2 characters in a room and just kind of having them talk at each other. It almost is like an acting kind of exercise, I think, that I've heard, play. And I think Bendis might have even got it from Mamet. I think that's kind of a Mamet thing. I was going to ask, as far as the timeline goes, when did you take Bendis' writing class?
That was January of 2010.
Okay, so yeah, you had written some stuff like Nailbiter and things like that prior, correct?
No, Nailbiter didn't start until 2014.
Oh, wow. All right, so what was your first creator-owned stuff prior to Captain Midnight, or was there any?
Oh, shoot, it was a lot of junk.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, back in the early 2000s, I did a book called Plan B. It was like a superhero book. Here's the thing. A lot of the stuff I did was not very good. It was all me just like, I feel like I learned in the field, which is how I feel like you should learn. Like,
sure.
I would make stuff and I would just get it out there to people, like I would make mini comics back, in like 2000. I would just make mini comics and hand them out to people. I did a book called Kid Justice. I know I'm going to forget stuff. Kid Justice. What else did I do? Gentleman Zombie. Oh my God. Yeah. Like,
were you drawing them as well as writing them?
No. But in some cases I was inking books. I was doing layouts. I was doing flats and coloring in some cases. What we were talking about before we started recording, we were talking about all-nighters.
Yes.
And I can't do them anymore, but there was a time back in there's a couple different times I've done all-nighters. There was one time back in 2000, we had this comic. It was called Rough Cuts. That's what it was. So the first comic I ever did was called Rough Cuts.
Okay.
And so we made this book, and I spent the entire weekend coloring it, like not sleeping, coloring the entire book. And with 2 other buddies, we made these comics. We get to Kinko's, and we find out that, and we were stupid. We were all graphic design students, so we should have known better. We knew enough about printing that we went to Kinko's to try to print them to go to San Diego Comic-Con with them. Uh-huh. And they told us the cost of what color it was, and we're like, none of us can afford that. That's crazy. Black and white. But I spent that entire weekend coloring it. So we just changed it to grayscale, which was super disappointing, which you can't really do that. You can tell, like, a book when it was colored. You can see now when books get like, it's actually not happening anymore, but remember how like back in 2000s, 90s, people would reprint a book that was in color and black and white, and you could tell it didn't look as good because it's a different method of coloring than doing grayscale.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that back in 2006, my buddies and I, we were making these comics, and this book I was making called Necessary Evil. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to print 100 of them, full color, really nice production values, print 100 of them, go to San Diego Comic-Con and try to get publishers to pick it up. Like, try to get Image or somebody to pick it up. And my buddies, they also had their books. There was like 2 other titles, and then my book. My book was called Necessary Evil. And so we were broke, you know, like none of us had money. One of my buddies worked for a graphic design place, and he was like, you know, if we come in over the weekend, we can probably print them at my job. We have these really nice printers here, we can probably do it. And I was like, oh, that sounds great, let's do that. So I kept asking him ahead of time. I was like, have you tested it to see if they can actually print comics? Like, you guys print a lot of stuff there, but can you print comic books? And he's like, yeah, it'll work. I tested. I was like, all right. So we were putting together these comics, but at the same time, I was also putting together an anthology, because I would do that for other people. I would put together anthologies for them.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot about production. So people would come to me, and I'd do anthologies for other people, or I would help them with their anthologies.
That's great.
I even produced some, because when I was living in California, like, someone would say, like, oh, I want to make a movie, and they want to make, like, a 20-page comic to help sell their movie, and I would help them produce the comic.
Sure.
So I was doing this anthology at the same time as doing these other comics. So I didn't sleep for 3 days.
Jesus.
And I remember I got down there with him. This is like, so after not sleeping for a day, I drove to LA. It's Saturday morning. I think the last time I had slept, at that point I was up for 24 hours. Or I think maybe it was like longer than that, like a little bit longer than that. So we get up there, and I told my friend, I'm like, oh, this is all ready to go. And he was like, no, I did not test it. Oh my God. All right. So let's do one comic. Let's see how long it takes us to produce one comic. And it took so long, and we had to hand cut them and hand staple them. And on the sheets, we had to cut the sheets and then staple them.
Okay.
And I was like, we're going to produce 100 comics. I want to do more than that at that point, but 100 for me and 100 for them each, because we had 3 comics we were going to make.
Yeah. Thankfully,
the anthology was printed someplace else. But with this is what we were going to do. And it took us all night. Like, we were just up all night long. And I remember I was wearing sandals. Okay. And we're basically in a printing house. So the bottoms of my feet were just covered in ink. Just
oh, jeez.
Little toe black ink. And we just did this. We finished it by Sunday afternoon. We had them done. I drove to a buddy's house. It was nearby. It was like me and my friend. He's like one of my closest friends. We drove. This might have been 2005, actually. It might have been 2005. We drove to a buddy's house. It was in LA. It was nearby. We got in there, and another friend of ours was with us. I remember I barely made it to the couch. Like, I was like, I'm gonna black out, and I fell down on the couch, and my friend was like laying on the ground, and I was like, all right, cool, let's just sleep for a while. And then all of a sudden, my phone is going off. I answer my phone. It's my buddy on the ground, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why are you calling me from the floor? He's like, man, I left. That was like 7 hours ago.
Oh my God.
I just blacked out. I had no awareness of the amount of time in there. But then we went to the con. We sold our books. We had a table in the small press. It was at San Diego Comic-Con. We had a small press table.
Okay.
We were right next to Oni, so we'd go to Oni, go to Image, go to Dark Horse, wherever we could.
Sure.
We finally got picked up by Desperado. They picked up the
that's great. Joe Pruitt, sure.
Yeah, they picked up... I actually was producing a few different things at that time. One of them, they liked Necessary Evil, so they ended up publishing Necessary Evil for 9 issues. We never published the 10th issue, which was finished. I think it's finished. Okay. I'm trying to remember if it's finished or not. We never published the 10th issue. We just ran out of money, time, everything, Did some more anthologies. And what else was going on then? So then I did this book... and at that point, I knew a few people. You know from working at a store. From being that person at the con, handing your books out. I knew a lot of people at DC. I knew a couple people at Image. I knew Jim Valentino. And by that point, I knew Jim Valentino. So my buddy and I, we had done a couple little like web comics. We'd done a couple little things here and there. We started working on this kids comic called Dear Dracula, and we submitted that to Jim Valentino, who picked it up.
Cool.
And a hardcover graphic novel for kids.
Oh, wow.
They published that. And then because of that, so that came out in 2007. So Necessary Evil was coming out still at that time. That hardcover came out. Jim did 2 other minis with me. One, a 3-issue mini called Johnny Monster. It was like an all-ages book.
Okay.
On the flip side of that, he did a book called Overlook with me, which was a crime noir book with black and white. They did those. Now, I was already giving I would give my comics to whoever I could.
Sure.
Like, I would just mail them in, whatever. And Jordan White at Marvel pulled Necessary Evil out of the slush pile. Read it. We had never met before, never spoke. He read the first 2 issues. He liked it, and he gave me my first real paying job.
That's cool. He's a good dude. I like Jordan a lot.
Yeah, I like Jordan a lot. I'm really happy for him right now. I'm glad he's like,
yeah,
men, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, you're absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. So here's the thing. He might tell me I was wrong. I think he had only been at that job for maybe 6 or 7 months then, and I was the first time he was ever given a chance to do anything.
Wow.
Like, time he was given a chance to like pick a writer and hire a writer. So yeah, I'm really happy for Jordan.
Jordan, yeah, no, he's been doing a lot of cool. I mean, for leading up to X-Men and stuff. Yeah, he was doing so many great, quirky little minis and things like that. And you know,
doing Star Wars. I mean, that was a big deal.
What's
like,
that? Say it again.
He was doing Star Wars.
Certainly, yeah, then. But I'm saying even before then. You know, like he get Seeley to do an Ant-Man miniseries and stuff like that.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. He did a what was it, Power Pack? I think he did a Power Pack. Yep. He did like Warriors 3 thing. He did a lot of stuff. So he gave me my first job, and then right after that, DC gave me my first job doing like another little. It was like a short story. And I've always been more of a DC guy. There's a lot of Marvel stuff. There's people at Marvel I like and I want to work with. There's some Marvel characters I want to work with, but not the same as DC. And so with DC, I know I push them harder. And I would try to go to the office as often as I could, and I knew people. And so they started giving me little bits of work here and there, and then they started giving me inventory stories.
Okay. And
I was doing jobs doing like graphic novels. I did a couple other little graphic novels, but they started giving me inventory stories. And it was interesting. So they pulled me aside at San Diego Comic-Con, and this is like, I think this is 2009. They pulled me aside, and they're like, all right, what do you want to do? We're going to give you an inventory story. This is the first one I did. They're like, we're going to give you an inventory story. And I think I had done a couple of like little tiny things for them, but they're like, we're going to give you an inventory story, which somebody might tell me I'm in trouble for saying this, but basically it's to test if you're crazy or not.
I hear you. Yeah.
It's a test run. It really is a test run,
sure.
But all part of it is like, how do you work with them? How do they work with you?
Right.
Can you do it? Where you at? You know?
Yeah, for the uninitiated, if you don't know, an inventory story is like if, you know, in between arcs or in between creators, sometimes mid-arc, if you need a fill-in issue and everything, that's an inventory book.
Yeah, and they don't know when they're going to use it or
right.
not. Like, it's there for years.
It's got to be a standalone. Yeah, it's got to be kind of a standalone thing that they can just...
Yeah,
you know.
I'm not going when I say this right now, but there's like 4 Flash inventory stories that were done that they haven't had to use, that might not ever have to use.
Oh, wow. Well, that's cool, though. That's cool that, you know, that's convenient.
Yeah. So they came to me and they were like, and this was funny about now, so they came to me and they said, we want you to do an inventory story. You can pick either Superman or Batman, but don't do Batman because everyone does Batman. And so I thought about it for a little bit, and I was like, all right, I got it. How about Batman and Superman? Because at the time, Superman was still coming out. So I was like, what if I did both of them? And they were like, no one has ever said that before. You should totally do that.
That's great.
All right. So I wrote a Batman Superman inventory story. Turned it in, they liked it. They let me do a couple more inventories in case there was ever a problem in that book, in the Superman Batman book, they could slot it in.
Right.
That's the idea. Is it's like sometimes it's in case of emergency. Sometimes it's just like, hey, you know what? This is a good story. Let's put it in.
Sure. Yeah.
One of the ones I did was about Damian and Supergirl. So that one actually got slotted in. They actually used that one.
Okay.
I'm really happy with that one. It's still like one of the things I'm like proud of from like early in my career.
No, that's cool. It is those little things like that obviously get you noticed, and also, I don't blame you for being proud of things like
so then
that. That's great.
They gave me Uncharted. Then I did Voodoo for a little bit. which was a New 52 book that Ron Mars had started, and I came in to finish off the last like half of it before it got canceled. Realistically. What else, man? So this is the thing. We're not even at 2012 yet. Like, there's so much crazy stuff in there, and there was a moment there, and I've talked about this publicly, where it was like, when I had heard about the New 52 before it was announced, and I was already doing a little bit of work for DC, and I'd actually pitched to take over Superman Batman, but I didn't get it for a lot of different reasons. But I wanted to work on the New 52 so badly, like so badly, that I would have given anything. I would have taken anything they gave to me, which is why they gave me Voodoo.
Voodoo was a Milestone character, right?
No, Wildstorm.
Oh, it was Wildstorm, excuse me.
Wildstorm character. Yeah, I was going crazy during that time period. Like, I was so just, like, hungry and ambitious and aggressive about it. And I was working on a couple little things here and there and create your own stuff, but it wasn't being myself. That was, like, the lesson I learned, was I was just being a mimic. Like, I was just doing whatever the job came. I wasn't finding my own voice.
Gotcha.
Like Bendis in class talked a lot about voice, and I did not really understand what he was talking about. Like, realistically, when I look back at the class, I knew bits and pieces of it. I can't remember the word he used, but he knew I was really ambitious. But it was like I was so hungry for things, but I was so hungry I was like rushing.
Okay.
And I knew the fundamentals, but I didn't have the style or the voice yet. And so I was just trying to get whatever I could. When I got Voodoo was okay. It was a good experience. It didn't work out. And then I was done, like, at DC. Like, I had gone from doing, like, a little bit of things here and there for, like, 3 years to suddenly having no work. Like, it just stopped.
Wow.
And, but that was when I got the job working on Captain Midnight. But that time period, I kind of took a step back, and, you think about, like, the hero's journey, the writer's journey, and, like, the belly of the whale and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, I felt like that's where I was in my career, where I had this moment where I went from having, like, a book out every month or 2 books every month to all of a sudden there was, like, a 9-month time span where no books came out.
Wow, I can understand that. That's a long time.
Right?
I hear you, man. Yeah.
But in that time period, it was, one of the things they talk about with, like, being in the belly of the whale is that, like, you don't know what's happening in the outside world, and the outside world doesn't know what's happening to you. That was that time period of my career, which I think a lot of people should go through this in a way, but it was like, I basically started developing. Ghosted was already running, but I really started developing Ghosted. Like, I mean, running in terms of, like, I was talking to Skybound about it. It hadn't come out yet.
Okay.
But Ghosted, Nailbiter, Birthright, Captain Midnight, all that stuff is in that 9-month time period. And then all of a sudden, June of 2013 hits, and there's Ghosted and Captain Midnight. But I was already working on Birthright and Nailbiter. They just hadn't come out yet. They both didn't come out until 2014.
Okay.
But I was already working on them. And Predator, too. Like, I was already working on all that stuff. So it was really weird. It was like a 9-month time span where books weren't coming out, but I was working that entire time. And I did a couple little things here and there. But, yeah, so Bendis' class 2010, Nailbiter 2014, and then, things just keep going from there. Yeah.
That's cool, man. No, that's great. And, and honestly, I remember years ago, Brian even said, he's like, you got to talk to Josh Williamson eventually. I'm like, okay, good to know, And I know it was around the time of Captain Midnight and everything, and I'm like, oh no, I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying that stuff. He's like, hey, he took my class. So I'm like, okay, good to know.
Yeah, I was in the very first class.
That's cool.
I wasn't sure I was going to take it or not. I knew a couple of people, and because I wasn't sure. I'm super thankful that I took it. There was a part of me that was like, oh, have I done too much to take this class?
That's what I was wondering in terms of where you were in your career when you took it.
Yeah, well, looking back, God, it's so funny. Like, I look back at it, and there was a creator this morning. We were talking about quote unquote new creators, and I'm not going to name any names. I tell this story, but we were recommending somebody. Me and another creator I'm very close to. We were recommending another creator for a job, and I said they're new. And the other creator was like, "Do you think they're new? They're not new. They've done this, they've done this." And I was like, "Oh, come on, they're new." And we had this whole thing back and forth, and I was like, "Man," this is the other creator. I was like, "You and I are kind of new, like it's still that thing." And I think when I was in that class, like right before I signed up for it, because I had to email Brian personally and ask him if I could sign up for it because I wasn't a student, and I think he was over the limit of the amount of students he was allowed to have.
Okay.
I wasn't a current PSU student.
Yeah.
So I found out from the school if he gave an okay, I could take the class. So I had to email him personally and ask him to take the class, and he said yes. And I had to run to PSU that next day and fill all the paperwork out and all this stuff before I could take it. But there was a moment there where I was like, have I done too much? Like, I've done stuff for DC, I've done stuff for Marvel, I've done stuff for Image. Have I done too much? And looking back, it's like, I was a baby. Like, I hadn't done a lot at all at that point. But I learned a lot from his class and a lot from him. And there's things that to this day will kind of pop up into my head. And it was one of those things where I think in the class, I was learning things, but was like, I don't want to say cocky, but it didn't click in my head quite the same until like years later. Like I'll be writing a scene and be like, oh, that's what he was talking about. And that still happens all the time.
Interesting. That's cool. Now, I mean, because I don't have the issues in front of me. How many Flash issues have you done so far? Because it was bi-monthly, right? Or bi-weekly?
Double ship.
Double ship, yeah.
I have written 84 issues at this point. So I'm ahead. A little bit.
Are you in the 70s right now with year one?
Yeah, 72, 73. 73 comes out next.
Okay.
So I have written up to 81.
Great.
And I've done 2 annuals and a special, so 84 total.
That's awesome, man. No, that's terrific. No, and I'm enjoying.
I could never. Man, when I got this job, I thought I was going to be lucky if I got to 12. So
that's great, man. No, that's terrific. And no, Flash has been in great hands. And as I was telling you before we started recording, the Button was a fantastic crossover and certainly dipping into Doomsday Clock territory in interesting ways. And man, it's inevitable, and we've all seen Doomsday Clock 10, and we know, and certainly from the Button, that eventually Jay is coming back. Full force, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff's. I mean, now some of the stuff's already out there because he was in 10, and then he's in Justice League. Like those covers are already out there. Scott's on the interviews.
There you go.
But I don't want to talk too much about Jeff's stuff because I always where I want to spoil Jeff's stuff.
Oh yeah, no. And hey, man, I'm not into spoilers. It's okay, but
See, I want to get Jay back. I have a whole thing for Jay that I want to do. I have a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, that's the thing. Like when I got the job, I was like, I really was like, I want to do everything. I'm gonna do everything. And so even now, as I'm like, thinking about what I want to do when I do decide to leave the book, and when DC wants me to leave, which they're happy with me, I'm happy with them, so it's good. But I do take a step back sometimes and be like, what have I not done yet with this character that I want to do? And so I keep a running, notebook of all the Flash stuff, and there's characters and stories, all kinds of stuff I want to do. And
so did you want to do year one, or did they want you to do year one?
Oh man, I wanted to do it.
Okay.
I wanted it so bad. I pitched it right after issue 1 came out. So I think issue 2 had just come out. It was San Diego Comic-Con. I was just, having a meeting with them, and I said, this is what I want to do. I want to do year 1. No one has ever done one from Barry.
Yeah.
Like, not really. Like, little stuff with Barry Origins, but
sure.
Like Wally had his that Mark did when Mark took over.
That's true. Yes.
No one's ever done one really with Barry. And I know the mythology pretty well. I don't know everything about the character. I feel like I know a lot.
I think you know a lot. I'm enjoying year 1, and that was how Johns and I bonded in the first place, because I'm like, dude, I'm such a Cary Bates Flash fan. And I think he is the unsung Bronze Age writer that contributed so much to Superman, Justice League, and of course the Flash. And he's never in the conversation. And I love Jerry Conway, Marty Pasco's my buddy, and certainly Elliot Maggin, and all these great DC writers and stuff. But I'm like, Cary fucking Bates, man.
Yeah. And also, Cary was on the book for like forever.
Yes. Well, he closed it out. 350, man.
People come and be like, you have the longest run at this point, right? And I'm like, no, not even, like, not a chance. Not even a little bit. Like they can't make an omnibus. Like with Jeff, I think they were able to make like 4 or 5 Jeff Johns Flash omnibuses, right? Mm-hmm. With Mark, they could probably make like 2 or 3. With Cary Bates, it's impossible.
That's hilarious.
You would have to make probably like 10 of those omnibuses, maybe, to like really fit it in. Yeah, he wrote some really great issues. And there's a lot of stuff in there I really like, and a lot of stuff's hard. A lot of stuff was hard to find. A lot of it was hard to find for a while, but now with the I'm not even gonna plug this, but the app, the DC app,
sure,
the new one,
sure,
all the stuff's on there. So
that's great to know, man, because
yeah.
I have DC Universe, and I'm certainly enjoying it and stuff. And I haven't read many comic books on it, but I'm certainly watching all the shows. You know,
I read a lot of digital stuff now. I used to not. And I still am sometimes. I go to the comic shop every Saturday, and I pick up a couple books. I mostly go and take my daughter at this point so she can buy kids' books and stuff.
Fantastic.
But when it comes to single issues, I'm pretty digital at this point. But I buy. If you saw my office, it's crazy. Like, I buy every possible collection. I have all the absolutes that DC made, even before I became exclusive and I could ask for them. I have all the absolutes. I have like 1 million hardcovers in here. I have 1 million trades. I have a crazy collection of comics. I still have all my Flash comics, all my Batman comics.
Attaboy.
Anything that was signed, I kept. I sold my collection when I moved to Portland, so 11 years ago. I had... And this is I think this you're going to think this is a small number, but I thought this was a big number. But I had 100 long boxes.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but you know the people like Jeff that like 100 is like, what? 100, please. Like,
I understand.
I had 100 long boxes, so all those got sold, but I kept. That was kind of me breaking up. Well, then when I started doing a lot of mail ordering stuff because I was living in the middle of nowhere, and I'd get like a monthly shipment of comics from DCBS and. Or from Things from Another World, and I started having a pull at Cosmic Monkey up here in Portland, so I would drive up every 2 weeks. That was when I was living outside the city. Now I live, fairly close to a ton of comic book stores out here. That Portland has so many comic shops, so it's really easy now.
That's
but
yeah.
If I'll go out, I'll buy a couple things here and there, but it isn't like my hardcore reading. So it's like when it's stuff that is like my weekly read, that's all digital stuff. But even then, there are times where it's like, I have many different versions of like Long Halloween, but like I have the Absolute, I have the trade and a hardcover, but I have a copy of it digitally, and I started rereading it in the trade, and I don't know why I switched over to digital, but then I ended up liking it better in digital. Like the colors popped better, and
yes,
I actually talked to Tim Sal about it at MegaCon. He was sitting next to me, and we started talking about Long Halloween. And I asked him what he thought of it, and he was like, "Oh, it's like reading in HD." And I was like, "All right, good, yes."
Yeah, no, you're right about that, and I feel that way about the digital presentation. I agree with you. Yeah,
yeah. Sometimes it can be. Sometimes it's different. Like there's a couple books. Like I said, I buy a lot of trades. So especially with Image, like usually I buy almost. I don't say every Image trade at this point, but like the volume ones. Like if I go to my comic. When it's $10, I'll buy an Image
Smartest
trade.
business move Image ever did, the $9.99 first trade.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So I read
brilliant.
Oh, yeah, dude. We have Nailbiter #1 was like that. Birthright was like that. So was Ghosted. But so I ended up reading a lot of stuff still, traditionally, I guess, with trades and things like that. But sometimes it just matters. Sometimes there's older books that I'll just read digitally. And I don't know what happened the other night. I started rereading Watchmen digitally. Just like a fluke, just laying in bed and being like, I feel like reading Watchmen right now. And there's something interesting about the digital side of things. It sort of does. It's a different experience than reading it traditionally. But yeah, we're going off on a million tangents here.
No, but it's all good. That's all right. Well, no, I'll get us back. Year one is terrific, and I'm happy to talk about the credits.
Oh yeah. So I asked them about it. That's what it was. Okay. I asked them and they said yes. But it took forever to make it happen. It took 2 years to make it happen.
Okay. Well, it's worth the wait. And now, again, I think the first time I read Showcase 4, what was in Showcase 4, was probably a trade that came out in the 70s called Secret Origins of DC Superheroes. It's got a black cover, and all the heroes are on it. And it was after those Fireside Marvel, and I know you're younger than me, but you might be aware of these trades, the Origins of Marvel Comics and Son of Origins and Bring On the Bad Guys and all those books.
I have those. I have right here, I have the Great Comic Book Heroes.
Sure. Pfeiffer? Jules Pfeiffer?
Yeah.
Amazing.
That was one of the first things I read as a kid was that, which is crazy. Marvel Origins DC stuff, and it has the Spirit in it.
Plastic Man and the Spirit, absolutely. Yeah.
It's such a weird collection of books that you would never see again.
Well, yeah, exactly, because, Pfeiffer's a genius unto himself, but is that active cartoonist that can, with authority, talk about as a fan and as a reader what that shit was like when it was coming out. He's an amazing guy. I would love to talk to Jules Pfeiffer someday. He's incredible, and especially his last couple of comics I've tried, and it's a matter of getting the publisher too. Aren't you the superhero guy, Suntress? And it's like, yeah, but I
like comic books.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's like, hey, and especially like, historic cartoonists and stuff. It's like, no, I kind of know that stuff, and I'm only trying to learn more. But anyway, so Showcase 4. I give you a lot of credit, man, because the Turtle, that book, it really is Infantino's art. I mean, it's a great John Broome story, too. I think it was Broome and Infantino originally. But it's, the Turtle in that Showcase 4, obviously it makes sense because he's the opposite of Flash, but you don't really understand how he really is that formidable against Flash. And I think in year one, you're really showing a way to use the Turtle and make him formidable.
Yeah, people always treat him like he's a joke, and I kind of wanted to get away from that. Like, I wanted to show that he wasn't...
Sure.
Just jokey character.
Well, and again, he's the first villain. I mean, it's like, no, I think it's like the Turtle has a place in Flash's history and everything. And just that irony of, speed against slow. It's like, okay.
Yeah, and there's other thing is that in that Showcase 4, it was funny, like, no one ever brought this up to me, and then one guy at San Diego Comic-Con, or not San Diego, WonderCon, he finally asked me about it. So Showcase 4 has 2 stories in it, right?
That's right. Go on. Yes.
First one is him versus the Turtle, and the second one is him traveling through time for the first time.
That's right. And you see in the softcover trade, all they had was the Turtle story. So go on. Yes.
Okay, so that first story is him. You had me looking this up. So the first person to write that, it was Robert Kanigher.
Oh, it was Kanigher. That's right. Kanigher and Infantino. Yes.
Well, they came up with that over the weekend. You know that, right? It was like a thrown together thing. It was just like, let's make something new and do it over the weekend. Yeah. But yeah, so in Showcase 4, there's 2 stories. One is the Turtle. The second one is him traveling through time for the first time. And that was a big motivator for this story, was that like, oh no, he learned how to travel through time pretty quickly, but it wasn't exact. So that was a big part of making this thing where it's like, it's a story about the Turtle, but it's also about him traveling through time for the first time.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's great. I love it. And and what I was going to say, too, about mentioning Jay Garrick and also certainly Cary Bates' run, what I've always loved about The Flash in particular, and I think all of us have, is he's always been a legacy character. And it's every generation, every Flash has been important to the bigger story. And it is those stories when, at the time, the 3 of them, Jay, Wally, and Barry, would be together. And it's just like, no, that's cool. And obviously with the changes that came with the New 52, some of that stuff went away. And it's like, no, you need that, man. I mean, that's the great thing is, Barry literally reading a Jay Garrick Flash comic in Showcase 4. And then, of course, when they finally meet and everything. And then Wally idolizing Barry and everything. And then when you got, like I said, when you get the 3 of them together. God, I remember a Ragdoll story that... Ragdoll, and maybe it was Grodd, and maybe Ragdoll specifically was Jay's villain, but it was like, it wasn't an annual, but it was something like that, that Cary Bates wrote, and it was just great because again, it's like, no, these guys have their own specific villains and their own interrelationship, and it really is grandfather, father, and son kind of dynamic and everything, and it's like, no, you need that, man, you need that continuity, and that's why that beautiful moment in Rebirth when Jeff has, Wally come back and Barry, and they're in tears, and how could I forget you? And it's like, yeah, man.
I know. I just reread that this morning, actually. I was just, as soon as I flip through that occasionally, I think it is a great work that Jeff did that really tells you a lot about the DC universe, those characters, not just Flash and Wally, but just the characters. And it is a great, love letter to the DC, Absolutely. But it isn't beholden to the past. It is about moving forward too. It has Blue Beetle. It has Kid Flash in it. The wall is Kid Flash.
Yes.
So lots of moving forward. So as soon as everyone, it's next to my desk. On my desk, I have a bunch of different stuff, and that was one of the books that I always keep with me. And I was looking through it this morning and reading certain parts of it and stuff. And yeah, man, I have not been able to write the 3 of them together yet. I have not been able to write Jay, Wally, and Barry together yet. But I feel like I will. I always try to I don't want to jinx myself. I always have plans for those things, and I can see it in my head, and I know it, but I have a really big Flash story I want to tell at some point that has all three of them in it. Cool. So it's just a matter of time and, seeing how these things work out. Like, I feel like I have a really big story I'm trying to tell with the Flash that does talk a lot about the generational stuff, the legacy stuff. I'm just trying to make it work, that I want to do before I'm done. But yeah, man, I miss some of that stuff. It's funny because I started reading the Flash comics when Mark Waid took over.
Okay, sure.
And I did not stop reading the Flash book until I took over.
Oh, basically. That's great. Oh, that's
you know
good.
What I mean? It was like reading every month. And I went back and I read stuff, and I've always been, I would go back and read wherever I could and buy comics. And then, actually, that's not completely true. I can't remember the exact number, but when I was a kid, my mom and my dad were into comics.
Oh, that's great.
So I always had like a short box in the house. There's an issue of the Flash that has the Flash versus the Samuroids on the cover.
Okay.
That was the first issue of the Flash I ever read, was that one, which is why the Samuroids are in the button. Because Tom texted me when he was in the middle of writing issue 1. He was like, I want the Flash to be fighting somebody off panel. Who should it be? And I was like, the Samuroids! And, yeah. Which eventually will tell that story. He had them. What was funny is that he also had Barry fighting the Samuroids, I think, in Heroes in Crisis too. And I was like, I wanted to tell Tom, I wanted to be like, the Flash has other villains, right? Like, I feel at some point I'm going to have to do the story about why Barry has fought the Samuroids twice right now, but I've never shown it in the book. Yeah, like I started reading then, and I never stopped reading the whole time. Like, I read everything from that point forward. Like, as it was coming out, buying it monthly. There's gaps, obviously, because it wasn't come out forever,
Sure.
Like, after the book ended, and then it switched over after Infinite Crisis and went to Fastest Man Alive, and then Fastest Man Alive ended, and there wasn't a Flash book for, like, a hot second. So yeah,
are you saying back in the 80s, or are you saying back in when you said Infinite Crisis? I want to make sure you didn't mean Crisis on Infinite Earths, huh?
Oh, I was talking about 2000.
Okay, you are talking about the 2000s. Okay, yeah.
I went back and I went back and I was reading everything, and then when I got the job, I went back and read it again. And that time I was a little more like comprehensive with it. The first time around, as a kid, like just being a kid in the 90s,
sure.
Like being a teenager, I guess I should say, in the 90s. Reading that stuff, you're reading in bits and pieces. You're like, this cover looks cool. I'll read this story. This story looks neat. Read this trade, whatever I can get my hands on, because it wasn't so easy then.
No, I hear you, man. Well, and also, God, great writers in the 90s, too. Waid, and, of course, Grant Morrison and Mark Miller. And, I mean, it was tremendous stuff. And it's funny because as an older reader, again, I mean, I remember as a 5-year-old kid being in my dad's barbershop and seeing 12-cent comics and seeing John Broome, Infantino stories. And I remember some of those amazing 60s covers of, like, stop, you have to buy this book, or, something horrible's going to happen, or, the Flash's costume in shreds. I remember one cover, or when the Flash's costume was on a tree and a note's pinned to it. I can't remember the story behind that. But they always had these incredible covers, and it's like, what's going on? And then you open them up, and then you get into it, and it's like, holy shit. No, it was always a great book.
It's always so good. And I talked to Grant Morrison about it. We did a workshop a couple of years ago, and I talked to him about the Flash. It was me and Tom. At the end of the workshop, we went up and, obviously told him we loved him, and the usual bowing and giving our offering of thanks to him. And,
of course.
He talked to Tom a little bit about Man, and I talked about a little bit of Flash stuff with him, and he's obviously a really big Silver Age Flash fan, and he would talk about how it was like, the covers of Barry having the giant brain and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And he said something to me that really stuck with me for a while, and it still does, and I still try to like figure out how to do it. I mean, I'm no Grant, but he said that Grant was always an astronaut. He's always like the right stuff kind of character, where it's like...
That Barry was always an astronaut, or you mean Hal or whoever?
Barry.
Oh, okay.
And you know what I mean? In terms of like, what he was trying to say to me was that Barry is the type of person that can be on a space shuttle, like going into space, something bad can happen, but he would never lose his cool. He would always stay calm, and he would always do the right thing, and he would always be able to kind of, like, some people translate that as stiff, at times. 'Cause I think that's the weird criticism that a lot of people have of Barry.
Yes, especially when they brought him back for Infinite Crisis and everything, and
they used this. Well, let me ask you. There's a couple things. Well, one of my favorite moments is after Barry and Iris get married. Barry is driving into the sunset with Iris.
Okay.
And he turns and he looks right at the reader and he winks at the reader and then he asks the reader what should happen next.
Oh, I don't remember that. That's fantastic. Oh, that's awesome.
One of my favorite moments in a Flash comic is he just like stops the thing and he's like, "What do you think, reader? What should we do next?" And it's like, I feel like that is such a great moment. And part of it is because Barry understands the idea that like he, because he read Jay's stories in comics and meet Jay and he's aware that, how Grant's talked about that, like the levels of the comics and stuff.
Yes.
And I think there's a part of Barry that understands he's in a comic too. And so he looks at the reader and it's just like, what should I do next? And he winks at them and it's such a great...
Oh, that's wonderful. No, I didn't know about that. That's excellent. I just remember, like, even, it was still a novelty to have superheroes marry in the 60s. And, you had Reed Richards and Sue, and then you had, in the DC universe, you had Barry and Iris, and then you had Jean Loring and Ray Palmer, too. And, compared to Batman never having a regular girlfriend, and also Superman just, all the bullshit with Lois and Lana and everything all those years. So, yeah, it was kind of cool that, all of a sudden, no, this guy's got a wife, and she, I always love that he talks in his sleep. He was always the more human of all the heroes. Yeah. And absolutely, man. So I never found him stiff either. And of course, the subsequent writers leaned into that and really made him the common man hero.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let me ask you this question, because you've been reading The Flash for a while, right? Oh, yeah. When you were reading the trial of Barry Allen stuff,
I remember.
Did that feel like it was going on forever?
It did go on forever, but I was into it because, again...
That's what I know, because I know it went on forever. I know it got dragged out because of some of the stuff with Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Right, and also the irregular schedule it was on, too. It was only like 8 issues a year. It wasn't even like bi-monthly. It was a little more than bi-monthly, but not much, as I remember.
See, I didn't know that. Yeah. And that's why I was curious if somebody was reading at the time, because you hear that from people, and then I have it. So I have the Showcase Presents version.
Yeah. The black and white.
That's a big book.
Yes, it is. Absolutely, it is. It's like 25 issues or something like that, at least.
Yeah, so I'm like, that did go on for a long time. So, but I want to know from somebody who was reading it at the time, did you feel like it was going on forever? Like, when people talk about, in the 90s, people talk about the Clone Saga went on forever, but...
No, I didn't feel that. What I felt was, I felt uncomfortable because, man, he's accused of murder and he changes his face and all these horrible things are going on with him. And so, yeah, man, Carey put him through the ringer in that story. Yeah. And it really is this, like, how the hell is he going to get out of this? Which was great because, I'm trying to remember now, Crisis and everything. I think I was maybe 15, 16 when that shit was coming out. And, yeah, I was like, and it was one of the few comics that I was kind of still staying with, because the stories were so amazing and involved. So, yeah, and it's shocking to see how low the sales numbers were. And I'm like, geez, all I can say is I was still buying it at my drugstore. It wasn't even a 7-Eleven. It was an independent drugstore. I'm like, I was still buying it. And, so you're like, oh, yeah, right. And I'm like, well, I didn't see every issue. I'd miss issues and stuff. But it was like, oh, it's still going on. Okay. So I didn't read every chapter until that Showcase came out. But it was a great story. And then the ending. And it was, they live happily ever after for a while. And it's like, oh.
Yeah, for a while.
And it's like, all right, what's going to happen? And then, oh, God, Crisis 8. Good Lord. And that's why I was so happy when Barry came back. And I loved the teases we got. I loved Wade's Return of Barry Allen story. That was a great psych. And it's so worth reading if people listening haven't read it.
Yeah, that's my favorite Flash story of all time.
Well, sure, and the great thing was, Wally earned the right to be the Flash, and it was this beautiful, poignant moment at the end of Crisis that Marv wrote, and obviously Marv knew what he was doing with Wally and Titans and everything, and those Mike Baron post-Crisis on Infinite Earths issues, and William Esser's Loeb's as well. They set up so much that I can appreciate the readers younger than me going, no, he's the Flash, and yeah, we've heard of Barry Allen, but we don't need him anymore. And I understood that. I got that. And I mean, it's him. It's very interesting. And we'll see how long Roy stays dead post Heroes in Crisis. But it really was Roy, Donna Troy, Dick Grayson, and Wally, as they were the sidekicks that were allowed to get a little bit older, and we got to grow up with them. And especially even more so the people younger than me. So I get it. I get that love, especially for specically even Donna, Dick, and Wally.
I grew up reading Wally.
Sure.
Like my first, I went back and I read a lot of the Barry stuff, but it's like, I started reading with Born to Run and Return of Barry Allen.
Sure.
Return of Barry Allen is it's a great comic.
Oh my God. And it is, and I mean, and it hits every note of, oh God, man, Barry's back. Isn't this great? And then it takes that great left turn and you're like, wait a minute, what the hell's going on? And all of a sudden it's like, okay, and then the big reveal.
Yeah.
So, people know, obviously, I'm sure people know what I'm talking about, but I'll leave it if you haven't read The Return of Barry Allen. It's excellent.
So good. I rip off that story all the time. I look at it, and especially if I'm writing Thawne. If I'm writing Thawne, when I think about Barry and Wally's relationship, I think that really tells you everything you need to know. I mean, it's a Wally story, but it's a Barry story too.
It totally is.
It tells you a lot about who Barry is through the way Thawne sees him and the way that Wally sees him, and so
absolutely,
I go back to that one every once in a while.
And I love these moments between classic villains and the legacy characters where there's a connection, and the same goes with, and I don't even know who did it first, but Dick Grayson and Two-Face. And that Two-Face always called Dick when he was robbing the boy hostage, and just would needle Dick. And it's like, I know Tomasi revisited it when he was writing Nightwing, and it's like, no, there should be some grudges between the classic villains looking at the legacy guys like, please, Kid Flash, fuck you. Yeah. And Wally seething and like, you asshole, you made me believe that my uncle was back. And all right, now I'm spoiling it, but I don't care.
Well, no, but remember, here's the thing. So Wally was president of the Flash fan club, right? So was Thawne, man.
That's right too. Yes.
He's a character who really looked up to. He studied Barry. He wanted to be the Flash in his time period. Just like Wally did. Like Wally and Thawne have a lot in common.
Sure.
Which is why I think that story works so well, and I was able to play with some of that stuff when I wrote Thawne, and then when I was able to write Hunter.
Yes.
I was able to play with a lot of that stuff. And, Mark and Jeff, they did a lot of really great groundwork with those characters that was really fun and easy to mine when I was working on this book. And I tried to find my own way, my own path on it. But, I love The Flash. I don't know, I got really lucky.
It's pretty obvious.
So basically, Scott came to me when I hadn't worked at DC for like 2-3 years. Snyder came to me and he was like, he knew, we had talked a couple times where he knew, and he was like, I know you like that character a lot, why don't you write him? Why don't you ask to write him? And I was like, nah, DC's never going to hire me for that. Like, they're not going to hire me for that. That's too big a character. They're not going to hire me for that. But I remember he walked away from me. We were at a con. It was at C2E2 2015. And he walks away from me, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like, I couldn't let it go. And I was obsessed after that. Just for months, I just couldn't let it go. I kept thinking, like, I want to write that character, and if that's an option, I should try. And it necessarily wasn't an option at the time, because I think they were just starting off with a post-DC YOU Flash stuff. Like
yep.
Convergence. That's what it was. I think they were coming back from Convergence. They just moved, and I was just like, man, I want to write that character. I think that maybe they moved a year. Maybe had moved a whole year at that point, but I want to write this so badly. And do you know this story? Do you know the story about me and Dan?
No, talk to me.
Oh my God! All right, so
I want to hear a story, the Dio story. All right, I like it.
Okay, so I go to the office. I meet a couple people here and there and talk about the idea of writing. And I go to Brian Cunningham, was a Flash editor at the time. I talk about it. Say, this is what I want to do, and I kind of pitch him a little bit. And he's like, "That sounds interesting. That sounds cool." But he's just. I think what I was pitching wasn't great, but he was very nice about it. He gave me some advice, some thoughts, whatever. Well, Nailbiter was doing pretty well, so was Birthright, but Nailbiter was doing really well, and the trades were selling really well, and so somebody in the building was like, we should talk to Josh, we should try and talk to him, see if we can get him to come over, see if he's interested in something. So I had this meeting with Dan, so I don't know how to kill, I think somebody helped me set it up, or I emailed Dan, I don't remember, but we had this meeting, and it was scheduled for 3 o'clock at San Diego Comic-Con on Sunday, I think. So it was like Sunday, San Diego Comic-Con, meet with Dan.
Okay.
And I'm like, it might have been Saturday, but I'm like, all right, cool, I'll do that. I can be there, and I will pitch him my Flash story. So I'm on this panel. I'm in an image panel. Scott's actually sitting next to me. I'm on this image panel, and I get this text from Dan's assistant, and she's like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "Oh, it was 3:30. That's what it was. My appointment with him was at 3:30.
Okay. It's
3:10."
Okay.
And she's like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "My appointment was for 3:30." And she says, "No, it was for 3."
Oh shit.
Panel, and you know how San Diego Comic-Con is upstairs in a panel room.
Yeah.
Dan at the DC booth, and we were supposed to go to the back and talk out on the steps or something, whatever.
Sure. Yes.
Outside at like the TV bar or something.
I understand.
So I'm like, no, 3:30. And she's like, no, 3. And then somebody else, Fletch texted.
Oh, hilarious! I love Fletch.
That's when I knew there was a problem. 'Cause I've known Fletch since I was working at the shop.
Okay, sure. I love Fletch. He's awesome.
So I knew enough. Like, if Fletch is texting me, that means I'm wrong. You know what I mean? Or like, there's definitely a need for me to get downstairs.
Yeah,
I'm wearing a hoodie. I'm wearing a black hoodie, black jeans, right? And I'm running through the San Diego Comic-Con Convention Center in July heat,
yes, indeed.
right?
Yes, indeed.
And I run up to the booth. I see Dan, and he's talking to Fletch, and Fletch is like, he's right there. And I run up to him, and he's like, I don't have time to go to the back. Let's just talk for a few minutes. And Dan does not know me.
Okay.
Right? Like I've talked to Dan a couple times. You know, I've had those moments with Dan where it's like I had talked to Dan a couple times when I remember when Teen Titans came out, the one that Jeff did in 2003. Sitting in my small press booth, and he came over and I said hi to him, and he sat down and we talked for a little bit. But like those are just, you know, I'm just another at the time, but I want to be talking to him, right? Even when I was working on a couple books, I would talk to him occasionally, but I was working on little minis and one shots and stuff where it isn't, you know. So Dan doesn't really know me. So he basically is like, well, let's go in these little closets, right? So they have the little closets that are at the booth, right?
Yep.
Right? So I go in this little closet with him, and he's like, all right, he's like, we're thinking about having you do like a one shot or do a couple different books. He starts talking to me, and I just said, Dan, no, I don't want to do any of that. All I want to do is the Flash. And I started talking about the Flash to him and giving him my sales pitch, and I don't realize it, but I am red hot, right? Because I've ran to the convention center. I'm bright red. I'm sweating, and I am yelling at Dan. So, like, in my mind, I was, like, talking to him and being polite on something.
Sure.
I was yelling at Dan. And he, at one point, tried to, like, get out of the corner, because we were kind of in the corner of the closet. And I figured out, like, put him back in the corner. It's like, no, we're talking. I'm getting my, like, 10 minutes, right? So I just, you know, go at him about this idea I have for the Flash, and I just yelling at him in the corner. Like, basically, you're going to give me the Flash, and this is a story, and this is what we're going to do. And Dan just looks at me, and he's like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not giving you the Flash. And this is why. And he explained his notes on my pitch. He said, this is all the problems I have with your pitch. And I said, all right, cool. And then I like to take a deep breath, and I'm like, all right. And then I turn around, and the panel had ended, that image panel had ended, and so Scott, the next meeting that Dan had was with Scott. And Scott was in the corner, like he had come in at some point and was just like, what the fuck is happening in here? Because I was like yelling at Dan.
So in that pitch meeting, Scott came in while you were doing it?
Yeah, I did not even know he was in the room. And Dan was like, no. So the two of them, they left. They had to go have their meeting.
Right.
And then I was, all right, that went well. But in my brain, like, it's by the time I was like, that went well. And now I look back and I'm like, no, it didn't. But, so 3 months later, I thought about what Dan said. I took the pitch. I met him at New York Comic Con. I gave him a new pitch. He loved it. And he was like, let's do it as a Flash 12-issue series on the side or something.
Okay.
And I was like, that's great. Let's do that.
Sure.
But what it was is I'm still new. Like, Dan doesn't know me. I'm still new. Like, a lot of the editors knew who I was, and they had known me from before when I worked at the company. But then a lot of turnover had happened.
Sure.
A lot of people that weren't there anymore. Either got promoted or left. And so he wasn't going to, like, immediately tell me the whole Rebirth plan, right? Like, he wasn't going to tell me everything. But at that point, they were already working on it. They were already talking about it. So I didn't know that they were going to give me the Flash book. And I actually, at the time, Dan was just like, I love it, let's do it, 12-issue thing, we'll figure something out. He was like, give me 2 weeks. He was like, give me 2 weeks, and I will call you.
Okay.
And I was like, I can't tell if he's being serious right now or he's blowing me off. I cannot tell. And so I emailed him like a week later, and I was just like, I'm still interested, And he was like, yes, I know. He emailed me back. He's like, I know. Because I was hounding him.
Okay.
So then maybe about a month later, I was in LA for other stuff, other work stuff. And I went to the office, just talked to people I know there, and I had this meeting with Dan again at 3:00. And it was a Tuesday. And a buddy of mine, one of the editors, brought me to Dan's office, and it was like 2:55. And he was just like, he basically was like, I can't talk about it yet. I have some thoughts. And I was like, I know, but ready. And he's like, I can't talk about it yet. It's still too soon. When are you leaving? When are you leaving town? When are you coming? Are you coming back anytime soon? What's your schedule like? Like, he was asking questions, but at the time I was like, no one has officially told me I have this job yet. Right? Like, I still just talk.
Right.
And my meeting with Dan was at 3. But I was leaving. It was the last thing I had to do before I left the building. And Dan, like, walked me out of the building, and he was like, I promise you, we will talk soon. And I was like, all right. And I felt like it was a bit of a blow-off. I was just being paranoid.
Sure.
And I go outside of the building, the DC offices, and it's 2:59. Like, that's how fast that happened.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, this is going to happen. What I didn't know was, and Dan was telling me, Dan was like, I have to take care of some stuff first. But so then on Thursday, I got a call from Brian Cunningham, and he's like, we are flying you back. We're going to fly you down. You're going to sit in a room, and you're going to pitch what you told Dan to everybody. Like, you're going to pitch to Jeff and Jim and Dan and Bob and a slew of other people. You're going to do a presentation, and you're going to pitch to us what you pitched Dan. And I was like, oh, my God, okay. And I had a signing that weekend that was, like, across the country. I had all this stuff I was doing, so I was like, all right, cool, I'll be there Tuesday. So it was a Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So I sent Brian Cunningham what I had. I sent him 2 versions of a document. I sent him one that was like a short, like 2-page, this is kind of what I'm thinking document for you, for you to read over. And then I sent him my Madman notes, where I was like, this is going to look like I'm a raving lunatic, but this is everything. And so I flew in. I landed at LAX because it was Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Sure.
Normally now I go on to Burbank. But, they're buying me this plane ticket like a couple days before I fly down there. So the whole way from LAX to the office was just like an hour drive.
Okay.
Because LA.
Yeah.
The whole time, my head, I'm doing the pitch. I'm getting it nailed down. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this presentation. And there's a lot of people in that room, obviously, I look up to.
Sure.
It's like I look up
are you just cold reading when you do a pitch, or do you have visuals or anything? I mean, what are you doing?
When using like this, it's just me talking.
Go on.
Just fast talking my way through.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
But I got it ready to go. I'm ready to do this thing.
Yeah.
So sometimes you do pitches like that where you do have like a cover or something like that, or even image, some kind of stuff. But this is just me going in and bullshitting my way through. But I have a plan. I have this whole plan set up, and I get there and I get to the building, and I'm exhausted. and Brian Cunningham is like, all right, let's go talk. Let's go do this. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. We get up to Jeff's writing room. He had this big meeting / writing room. And I'm waiting. Just me and Brian. Brian gets comfortable, and I'm like pumped, ready to go. Who am I pitching this to? What am I doing? And then Jeff walks in, and it's just like, and I've known Jeff since I was a kid. Like, I met him, and this is the thing I said to him, because he came in the room, and I said, hey, how are you? And Brian came in, I was like, oh, you guys know each other? And I was like, oh, yeah, I've known Jeff for a long time. And I was like, I actually met Jeff right when he started writing The Flash, is when him and I met.
Oh, wow.
I met at San Diego Comic-Con. There was only a couple issues out. No one was there. I walked up, and I was like, I really like your work on DC stuff, but I really like these issues of The Flash you did. And it was the Wonder World ones he did at the beginning. It's like a Mirror World stuff that he did.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah, it was actually, when he did those issues, it was only supposed to be like an inventory. It was a filler, and then they liked him. They let him take over. And so I went and I was talking to him, and he was like, yeah, you and I met when I started writing The Flash, and now you're writing The Flash. And that was the first time somebody was like, oh, you're doing this.
Wow.
And I was like, all right, who am I doing the presentation to? And Jeff was like, nope, no presentation. Like, Dan told me your pitch. We talked about it already. You and I read the documents, which I did not know they sent them to him at first. Which that was something else I learned. I was like, if you turn something in, there's a good chance it could be read by everybody, but it's out, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, he read it. And he's like, all right, let's get to work. And so we sat down and we started talking about it. And then we got on his whiteboard and we broke out. We turned the first 12 issues into 8 with an understanding of what can go on past that. And we threw some things around. We mixed some stuff up. And yeah. And then that's when I got the job. And Dan came in like halfway through the day. And he just walked in, gave me a hug, said that Jeff, everything's okay. Jeff was like, everything's great, everything's good, thumbs up, and left. I did not see Jeff. I did not see Dan again, but he had like taken care of it. So
that's great.
So I got the job, and then I went home over Thanksgiving weekend and just wrote the first issue over Thanksgiving weekend.
I bet the words just flew, man. Once you knew that you were set, like you said, it's easier to write when you're relaxed and you know you got it.
Yeah, I knew that first issue. That first issue I knew so well.
Excellent.
The only thing that was weird was that I remember Jeff, one of his notes was that originally I had it where the storm that gave everyone powers, that happened at the end of issue 1, and it was going to happen to August and everyone at the same time, but August was going to be at the center of that. Okay. Jeff was like, no, start small first, have it happen at just August, so it's just Godspeed first, and then the second issue you end where it happens to everybody.
Okay, yeah. No, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. We kind of like shrunk some stuff down, stretched some stuff out, compressed in some places. But him and I had a lot of really great talks during that time about that issue. But yeah, once I got home, I just knew it. And I had known it, so I just pumped it out, turned it in, and then I've been writing it ever since. I've written a Flash comic every 2 weeks for like 3.5 years.
That's awesome, man. No, that's great. Now tell me about some of the wrinkles that have happened during Rebirth in your run, like the introduction of Wallace. Like, help me out, because again, there's Bart, and Bart can certainly, have that role of being the new young guy, as he always was, from the creation of Impulse through the Titan years as Kid Flash, and now we've got another Kid Flash. And I realized that the TV show had, Wally, had Wally and, again, Iris's brother, and their backstory. So how did that work out as far as being introduced in the comics?
I inherited. I mean, I didn't create that character. So I didn't create Wallace. He was created by Venditti and Van Jensen.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's right. The guys before you. Yes, certainly. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember who else created, but what was interesting was that he did not. It was really weird. It was like hinted he had powers. And there was like they did a time travel story too with like a future version of him.
Okay.
But it was never fully established they had the powers. And so when I was given the book, I am a continuity junkie. And I was, no man is left behind kind of thing. So it was like, no story is left behind. So once I knew what Rebirth was, so that was their thing. They didn't tell me, when I started writing issue 1, they didn't tell me what Rebirth was completely. I knew little bits and pieces, but I didn't know all of it until like maybe a week or two later I got a phone call and they were like, okay, we're telling you everything, right? Sure. They were like, Wally back. This is happening here. This is happening there. And I was like, well, I want to use everything. And so, with Wallace being in the book before, and he already established this story, of course I was going to use him. And I really liked him. Like, I liked him before. I liked that character, and I liked writing him. Yeah, there was some wrinkles there. I don't know. It was one of those things where, like, then it was a matter of how do I make this work? How do I make this all work? And then Jeff did a really great thing where he made it where Wallace wasn't Rudy's son. He was Daniel's. And once it became Daniel's son, because Daniel had gone crazy and became a Reverse Flash, it added all this backstory to Wallace that wasn't there before. So that was really interesting to me, to have this character who was the son of a villain now being Kid Flash, which was interesting at the time because Damian in Teen Titans, he is the son of, obviously, Bruce, but he is the son
Talia.
of
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And, obviously Ra's his grandfather, so that gave them a connection, right? And it allowed us to kind of just add more to him, and I had a lot of fun telling that story about this kid realizing that he always thought this was who his parents were, and then it's like, well, no, it's this person. Well, that person's a villain, and they had the speed. When they got the speed, they went crazy. Well, now I have the speed. Am I going to go crazy?
Sure.
That stuff, it was just really fun to write all of that. But at the end of the day, the book is about Barry Allen, so it's like, I can only have Wallace in the book so much. I wanted Wallace and Wally in the book a lot more. Wally was the harder one, because I think that, like, once he was in the book just for the Rebirth issue, then he went to Teen Titans.
Right, Titans. Yeah.
He wanted to tell his story over in Titans, and so it was hard to get him over. But this is the thing with DC, and this is really just comics in general. I can't go to them, and I'm sure there are people that can do this. They can say, I want this, and they get it. But to me, it's always been, what's the story? So if I go to them and I say, I want this villain, or I want this hero, I want this character, I want to bring him into the book, the question is always the same thing. Well, what's the story? How does it work? How is it going to work? How is the character going to get in there? And so that was always the challenging thing about Wally and Wallace, was making sure if I had them, it wasn't like they were just like cameoing or guest starring in the book for no reason. Sure. There was a story reason for them to always be there. And so that always presented a challenge. It's a good challenge, though, because it makes it for a better story if you actually have a story.
Absolutely.
Because the whole thing about writing, it's like, if the character doesn't need to be there and it will impact on the story, you should take them out. Right?
Oh, yeah, man. No, 100%. And you're right about that. And again, I think the evolution of comic writing, yes, they do. It does matter why they're there. My favorite Dan Slott conversation was, Silver Age JLA. They could all be riding in a bus and go into a tunnel, and the dialogue balloons will continue, the word balloons, if you will, and you wouldn't know who was talking because everyone was written basically with the same voice.
Yeah. I mean, you can't do that. I think about it all the time. Think about that's actually something I learned from Jeff. Jeff would talk about being specific with dialogue, and that was part of it. Was like, could you those games where you would take like quotes, and you'd have like a quotes, and then like a kid game, like a magazine, like Scholastic or something, where it was like, or highlights or whatever, where it's like, you have these quotes, and then next to the quotes you have like a picture of the character or that character's name or whatever. Wizard would do that. Wizard would have like famous comic book quotes. Maybe Wizard, might have been Hero that did it. Yeah. I don't know, but
so you'd match the quote with the hero and everything, basically.
Yeah. That should be something we're always aiming for. Like,
yes,
always have the ability to do that. Like, if I'm reading these lines of dialogue, can I know they come from these characters? And I think about that all the time. And that was something I got from Jeff. Like, Jeff was the one that kind of targeted that in a conversation, and I learned some of that from him with dialogue stuff of like being. He calls it specific. He would always say specific, but that was something I learned and I think about. And you're not going to hit it every time, but when you do, when you land those moments where a person is like, that is an iconic line for that character. It's great. It's magic. I'm trying to think of anything else. I've been really lucky with Flash. All the stories have been things I've pitched. You get notes on, and things get arranged here and there. But I've been pretty lucky with stuff, and I've had a really good time with it. I haven't had as much. I don't know. I've been really lucky with that stuff. I was always trying to find ways of bringing stuff in, like Jay. Like, I can't just go with Jay and say I want to bring Jay in just because. Bart was one I asked about. I asked about Bart the day I got the job, and then I asked about him again, probably about every 6 months. I'd ask about Bart and see if I could get him in there. And so then once Bendis came in, and he was like, "I'm going to do Young Justice," and he decided, from talking to him and the decisions he made with that. That's when I called him and I was like, "Listen, I've been trying to get Bart. If we can tag team this,
sure, yeah,
let's make this happen." And it did. It worked out. I was able to bring back Bart, and then he got to put him over to Young Justice. But yeah, Bart's a character I want to write more of. I don't know. I haven't had that much drama.
Well, I'm interested in your take on Barry's relationships with the various heroes of the DC universe, because I love a lot of the flavors that have been introduced over the years, and longtime friendship with Green Lantern, and it's different than the relationship with Green Arrow. And I've liked the times that, and I don't know if it was Vendetti or Jensen or whomever, that maybe Green Arrow and Barry don't necessarily get along, even though they're both friends of ours.
No, they do not.
And I like that. And that's the great. Or again, going back to the button, Bruce and Barry being police detectives, but in very different ways, or detectives. And there's I assume, some sort of respect between them, but they work very differently. And again, you've been able to really have great shades of, the differences in that relationship, and certainly the effects of Doomsday Clock and everything that's been happening since Rebirth has obviously, colored this relationship.
Yeah, well, that's my favorite thing to write. My favorite thing to write with superhero books is team-ups. Like,
sure.
I love writing the team-ups, and I like having characters can bounce off each other. I mean, Barry is at his best when he bounces off of people. I mean, I know that Mark was really good at this, of having the inner monologue, right? And I write the inner monologue too, but Barry a lot of times is by himself. He's running by himself, and that's a lot of times why Mark in particular would use the inner monologue so much. And him and I talked about it right when I got the job, and I asked his opinion on it, and he was like, that's a big part of it. It's because he's by himself, and you have to have that inner monologue, and he's moving so quick that it helps with that pacing of the story. But that was the thing I learned really early on, was he had to have somebody to bounce off of, and that's where Godspeed came from. Godspeed is kind of a jerk. He's different from Barry. He's easy to bounce off of, right? It's a person that can kind of play with the straight man of Barry. With all the other heroes, I love writing him with the heroes. Him and Hal, I think they have kind of that buddy at the bar.
Yeah.
Like, I visualize them, right? Like, that's why only time I've been able to write both of them together, they were sitting at a bar together, and then him and Batman. It's funny with him and Batman, I feel like we made that up. Like, that was not something that was really established really well ahead from before. I feel like that idea of the two of them being both, like, forensic experts, and knowing that the two of them are the only people who can understand what they're talking about, right? Like, not in the world, but you know what I'm saying.
Within the hero set, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, they have this understanding of crime scenes and crime and justice in similar ways, and so that's always fun to write, is sort of that idea of that. And then they've also are the only characters to really have sidekicks. Really have
correct.
Like, Wonder Woman has them. They all have them in a way.
No. You're right about that. Absolutely. Yeah, man. Well, again, that's why I go back to really Wally and Dick being so, having the relationship that they have, and to their heroes. But I will throw Roy and Donna in there because I think, again, because of what Marv and Perez were able to do with Titans and everything.
Yeah. Obviously, Ollie with Roy, and then with Diana and Donna. Yeah. But it's interesting when you look at, like, the multiples, or at least on the level of it, right? Because, there's still Connor, like Ollie's like Connor,
yeah,
Cassie, and there are. Sure. Like, they do have their mythology of their family, right? Yes. Like, but I think it's weird. I don't know. Maybe somebody who's a Wonder Woman fan or Green Arrow fan would tell me I'm wrong, but no one talks about the Wonder Woman family. No one talks about the Green Arrow.
Well, they pushed him away. They pushed him away at times. I mean, that's the thing. There were decades where they weren't together, and the only thing that separated Barry and Wally was death. And Dick, as much as Bruce doesn't want to admit it, is his conscience. And he and Alfred are the two people that can get in his face and be like, you're doing it wrong, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. And those relationships are not really as explored, I think.
I agree.
I think it would be interesting to write Wonder Woman and to explore that kind of, like, Wonder Woman family of, like, Artemis and Cassie and
Donna. Yeah.
And Donna. I think that'd be really interesting. Same thing with I mean, I'm gonna be wrong. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember a lot of Roy and Connor stuff.
Well, again, Roy after the infamous drug issue and stuff, he had to clean up, and Ollie was kind of deadbeat dad in a lot of ways, and didn't want to be tied down having to worry about the kid, and it made him guilty at times and feel guilty. And certainly subsequently in the hands of Kevin Smith and Brad Meltzer and people like that, we've gotten shades since then. But yeah, no, Ollie was kind of like, yeah, I got these warts, but I'm my own man and I'm just doing my own thing.
Yeah, one of my favorite issues of Green Arrow is the one that was Brad Meltzer, where I think it's Brad Meltzer. It's Brad Meltzer where it's Roy. It's Roy and Ollie, and they're up against Solomon Grundy.
Yep.
I think that's Brad Meltzer.
Yeah, was that when they had the Arrow car and everything too?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was during Brad's run. Yes.
yeah. That's such a good issue, but yeah, like that's interesting how those dynamics with characters. But yeah, Barry and Wally are two that have had the generational stuff a little bit further. You know, they have the multiple sidekicks, they have the multiple people they've felt responsible for, and how they've treated them differently, but oddly the same in some ways.
Will you? Let me ask you real fast. Will you? And again, I don't need you to spoil, and I don't want you to spoil. But obviously, where Wally has been left in Heroes in Crisis is a really bad place, and certainly it's jeopardized Barry's relationship with Iris. So, I mean, right now you're in the midst of year one, but you're close to the end. Is there only one or two more issues of year one left?
Of year one, yeah. There's there's three more.
Oh wow, three. Okay, great. Cool.
Yeah, 6 issues long, so there's 3 more.
That's awesome. No, that's cool. But obviously there's that dangling shoe of, Iris saying, hey, fuck you. And I mean, I can't be with you right now.
I mean, Iris, she's on the cover already, so I can say Iris comes back.
Well, sure. Eventually you're going to have to address it because it's Iris. For
yeah, it has conversations.
Well, that's honestly, talk about Iris and Barry, and then just in general terms, because compared to Lois and Clark, I mean, there's a different marriage, and there's a different team up and responsibilities for both characters as well.
Yeah, I thought about that a lot in the beginning, of making sure that Iris wasn't just Lois. Yeah. A lot of people would just write her as she's just Lois. And there's a book. It's it was written by Wade and Augustine, but it's like the life story of the Flash.
Yes, go on.
And
that Iris writes. Yeah, Iris writes the book.
Yes. If anyone ever writes the Flash, I would say that is probably in my top 3 most recommended.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I got to remember that next time I talk to Brian, because they're doing that. They're jumping a decade and doing the next Archie, I think 50s or 60s thing, like they did the World War II Archie story recently. Mark and Brian.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you have to read that, and this is why. Yes, Born to Run is important, and I think Return of Barry Allen is important, and there's a lot of stuff you can read, I think. But I think that one, it has the mythology, it has the history of those characters, but it has Iris's voice. And it has her perspective on Barry and on Wally and the history. You're not just reading a history lesson, you're having her POV.
Is it a prose book or is it a comic?
It's both. It has art. It's prose. I would say it's prose with spar. Every page has a panel or two. But all the art was made for that book. But a lot of it was homages.
Sure. Yes. Key moments. Absolutely. Yes.
Right. Key moments. Exactly. But for the most part, it's a prose book. So it's written as if it was written by Iris.
Yeah.
And it's just such an important book to read, because you really get an idea of who she was as a character. That informed a lot of my opinions of them, and sort of their little witty back and forth, and sort of the idea that he's the only person that can keep up with her, right? I love writing them together. I miss when she's on the book. When she's on the book, it's kind of a bummer at times. I feel like I'm like Barry, Barry's bummed he's not around Iris, and so am I.
I understand. No, but you need those kind of moments. I mean, that's. When during Civil War, when Reed and Sue disagreed and we had to be apart for a while. I mean, no, those are great. And I mean, as much as I'm happy that they've restored the Lois and Clark marriage and how important that is in the evolution of both of them as characters. And I love what Brian's doing and stuff. And now even Brian with Leviathan, and also eventually with what Greg is going to do in the Lois book, and Greg and I have talked about it. Yeah, man, no, it's like it's interesting. I mean, because Iris, I don't know if Iris can carry her own book the way obviously Lois can from an iconic character, but Iris is so important to Barry, and all these civilian characters are so important to the heroes that have been allowed to have a cast of characters around them that are the civilians that don't immediately turn to become a costume character later. It pissed me off when they made Mia in Green Arrow the new Speedy. It's like, let her be Mia. It's, I'm like, I like, we need that. There's a good reason why Foggy is not in a costume, and he is Matt Murdock's conscience, and can be, again, another, I mean, that's the thing. You need these characters that can get in the heroes' faces and say, hey, you're fucking up. I don't know if you realize what's going on around you, but you're doing it wrong.
Characters like Alfred, I would never want Alfred to put a costume on. I would never want Foggy.
I don't mind flashbacks of Alfred as an MI6 agent or something like that. I don't, and even this FX Pennyworth thing is kind of intriguing. But yeah, I completely agree with you. Yes,
but Mia was built for that too, though. Like that was a character that was. I feel like, and I might be wrong. I would love to ask Kevin Smith about it, but she had to have been created to fill that role.
Probably,
like that had to be the long plan for her. But I'd be curious about that. But yeah, Iris is somebody I would never want to give powers and turn into a hero. I mean, or a superhero. Right. I think she's a hero.
I agree.
Right? Like, I think
absolutely.
Barry's obsessed with. It is interesting because there are some similarities with Lois, but Barry's obsessed with justice. She's obsessed with truth and making sure that people's stories are told and that people have a voice. And I think that's the thing. One of the reasons why Barry gravitates toward her is that he. Especially post Jeff Johns, it's like Barry's a character who was searching for the truth about having his mom for so long. So to meet somebody who is also searching for truth, I think he really gravitates towards her. And Barry's a character I think that no one would listen to him. Like no one would listen to him when he was like, my mom was not killed by my dad.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Like to meet somebody like Iris who's like out there trying to make sure that people's truths are told. And trying that, would listen to him. Obviously, he gravitated towards her, and she's a great character to write. And I've made it so I try to add little things to her character, like little silly stuff where it's like she's really into horror movies, which that's something I just sort of made up and put in there. Like she's really into horror movies. I think she would like to one day write a horror movie. She doesn't always want to write stories forever. That's what's important to her. But I think she wants to tell her own story, but also do fiction and. I like writing Iris a lot. I like writing them together.
God, I hope for an eventual, and I don't know if she'll be allowed to be alive still or not, but it'd be great to see Joan Garrick and Iris have a conversation about, being married to the speedsters and everything.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of that in a while, because, Linda hasn't been the book ever. I've seen Linda, I think I've had a couple, little cameos of Linda. But I wanted to write her. One of my favorite scenes in a Flash book is with Linda, and it's when it's in Flash 100, and they think Wally's dead. They think Wally has evaporated into the Speed Force, and they're up against Cobra, and she just picks up a big gun and starts fighting Cobra, and it's I think it's either I'm trying to remember, but it's either Salvador Roca or it's Oscar Jimenez. I think it's Oscar Jimenez. But he draws this amazing shot of her, and she's just standing on this wreckage, and she's just blasting this gun at Cobra. It's awesome. That's one of my favorite moments in The Flash is that moment with her. Because she was just no, I don't care if Wally's dead. I'm still going to fight you.
Great.
You're not taking over the city. But yeah, Linda is awesome.
Yeah, man. No, yeah. I don't expect an answer, but I can't imagine what's going to happen in Wally's next chapter. And he's in a bad place. What's that?
I feel like his story's not done.
Of course not.
I know
Of course not.
I mean,
can't be.
That's the answer.
It can't be.
Think about some of the stuff. We plan this stuff out so far in advance that it's tough sometimes because there's stuff sometimes you can see you're seeding things, you're planning things, and you know what's coming, and you're you just have to. It's hard sometimes to tell a reader wait.
Oh, I hear you.
know,
no.
hope they can trust you, and have faith, and I know sometimes that can be really challenging.
You want the impact of Heroes in Crisis to have some resonance. I mean, again, across the street, Marvel, they killed Johnny Storm. It's like, okay, we know Johnny's coming back. It's going to happen. But that's fine. Let's observe a world where Johnny's not there and everyone's grieving and everyone's dealing with it. And you have that great moment where Peter Parker and Franklin are on the rooftop and he's like, I know what it means to lose an uncle. And it's like, oh, that's great. God, I've told Hickman a million times when the Thing is so overwrought with pain and that he like the Hulk and Thor and I think Hercules just let him wail. Let the Thing wail on them just to get the grief out. And it ends with him crying in the Hulk's chest, and they're all just standing around him like, yeah, we get it. We know what you're going through. So, Wally said an emotional high, right? Or not actually an emotional low, but yeah, man, no, it's, his story's got to continue. And it'll be interesting to see if he, and again, I'm not asking for answers, can he redeem himself in a way that Hank Pym will never be able to redeem himself, for example?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, but I do think
he'll find a way.
Yeah, all I can say is the story's not over.
I hear you, man. It's all good. Do you have time to quickly just whatever you can talk about regarding Superman and Batman?
Yeah.
Is it Superman Batman or Batman Superman? I never know.
It's Batman Superman. Yeah, it's Batman.
All right.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing we were talking about before is that I wanted to pitch for that book back in. I pitched that one time when they asked me what I wanted, and that was back in 2009. Yeah. And then 2010 I asked for it, and they were like, no. And I didn't realize at the time it was because they were gearing up to do New 52. Okay. So about a year ago, God, longer than that now, about a year and a half ago, we had this meeting in the building, this big planning meeting, figuring a bunch of stuff out. And Dan was like, what do you want? Like, what do you really want? We were talking about all kinds of things, like, what do you really want? And I was like, well, there's one book I really want. I'm not sure you're going to feel about it, because I know the original Superman Batman book is a book that is important to Dan because it's really early in Dan's career at DC, when Hush and Superman Batman were books that he was developing when he first
came sure, in. Jeff Loeb, yeah.
Yeah, so I said, I want to do Superman Batman. And he was like, okay, we had this conversation about it, and then he was like, not right now. And part of it was because Tom was gearing up for the wedding, okay, and Bendis had maybe written one issue.
Okay, yeah.
So he was like maybe he had written the first issue. And he was like, and I'm talking about the first issue of Man of Steel, not even Superman.
Okay, yeah.
But he was like, you gotta let these guys, it's their characters right now. You gotta let them kind of have the room to breathe for a little bit, especially with Brian, because Brian was just getting to it, just starting to breathe. And I remember I pulled Brian aside in the copy room and was like, I'm pitching this. I'm asking, is that okay with you? I don't want to and he was like, no, of course.
Good. All right, good deal.
And I told Tom. Tom was like, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Cool.
And but then it took a while. And so then about 6 months after that, so May of last year, Dan and I were having breakfast, and we were having this big conversation about all the big plans we're having. And I was like, we could do a Batman and Superman book, and it would work, and this is how. And he was like, all right, I like that. And then he was like, but let's just wait and see what happens. Maybe we'll figure it out. And I was so impatient. And then a few months later, he saw me again, and we had a quick little meeting, I think in Boston. It was a quick one. And we were talking about all kinds of stuff. I was asking his advice on a couple things, and then I was like, well, I really want this Batman and Superman book. Do anything that's going to happen? He was like, let me get back to you. And then 2 weeks later, I saw another con, and that one he was just like, get started. Just fine. Get to working. And then I started working on the book, and that's where all the stuff with a lot of the Batman Who Laughs storylines coming through, where we have this really big story we're telling across the DCU with the Justice League, and we've basically been doing it since the end of Dark Knight's Metal. So it's like Dark Knight's Metal, we had this big plan already set up that we were already thinking about doing. Even long before that. It's so wild to think that by the time Dark Knight's Metal #1 came out, we were already putting together all this stuff, this big, massive plan that we had started with. I think, Flash War hadn't even come out yet.
Wow.
we had all this stuff we were talking about from the Bendis, and we didn't know the Bendis was coming over yet. We didn't find out until like right before I think he signed.
Okay, wow.
We found out a little before he signed. And so we had been building this big plan. You're talking about the summer of 2017,
Sure.
Even 2016. We were talking about some of these ideas. Really, you get around to like the summer of 2017, we started talking about this really big story and this big idea we had that would kind of come out of metal. And part of that was the source ball breaking, right? We started having this conversation about, okay, at the end of metal, the source ball is going to break, and that's going to lead to this, and that's going to lead to this, it's going to lead to this. And we started having this conversation about how can we tell a story that essentially, if you're paying attention, goes across the entire DCU that eventually will culminate into something. And, so we started having these conversations with Batman Who Laughs, all these different characters like Perpetua and Justice League, and the stuff that's going on with Lex, and things that are going on with all of these characters and where they're going to be at, and this big, gigantic math puzzle. We did a summit a year ago where we all presented the stories. We talked about a lot of it. And we've been doing updates and meetings to kind of keep these things running. Sure. But Superman is a major part of that because it's carrying the thread of the Batman Who Laughed, just carrying the stuff from Metal through to the stuff we have planned for next year. And so it really is this big, important part of this giant story we're telling with DCEU. But for me, I get to tell a story with two heroes I love. Like, I get to hang out with Batman and Superman and have them, again, like, bounce off each other. And it's just, that's the thing I love writing about that book, is the two of them bouncing off of each other. You know, they give each other a little bit of a hard time. You know, I think that Superman, as much as he plays the straight man of that relationship in some ways, I think people treat him like he's a Boy Scout. He clearly pokes fun at Batman, right? Like, you know, I think he's one of those characters, like you were saying, in a way that can kind of. It's interesting, like Dick and Alfred will get into Bruce's face and be like, "You're messing up." Superman will do that too, but I think Superman likes to kind of, just poke at Batman.
I hear you. Well, that scene that scene that Tom had recently, where they were, I think it was the bachelor party or whatever, and they're having, and it's just Bruce and Clark, and and really even all the double dating issue that he did with Lois and Clark and Selena.
Scott did those scenes in Justice League.
Yes.
And we've had a lot of conversations about those characters, and so it's just fun writing them together. And then I think that Batman, you know, how he looks at Clark, and I think he sees the same kind of thing, where it's like he can see through it a little bit. He can see through the bravado, and he understands this is a person that has the weight of the world on their shoulders. But it's not a show, right? Like, Batman is so much about theater.
Yes.
You know, he's so much about putting on a presentation, and Superman is not. Like, he is just genuinely that person. But I think Batman can see even past that a little bit and see the person that just kind of has the weight of the world on their shoulders, and then likes to kind of encourage it, but also relieve it.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, because, I mean, like, again, you go back to Loeb, and there was this respect, but also it always seemed like, Bruce makes it harder on himself, and that might be Clark's inner dialogue. And that Bruce, would think of Clark in terms of that he respected him, but almost forget that, this is an investigative reporter, and actually he's a pretty decent detective too, and beyond the powers could actually have something to offer with his mind.
Yeah, one of the things that's been interesting is writing Batman Who Laughs in this relationship, because Batman Who Laughs had his own Superman too.
Okay.
Right? And because he had his own Superman, I've been able to explore the relationship between Bruce and Clark by using the relationship that Batman Who Laughs had with his Superman.
Interesting.
Okay. Right? Batman Who Laughs thinks, he's an apex predator, but he's a horrible version of Bruce. Right? He's the worst version of Bruce possible. So what does the worst version of Bruce possible think about Clark? Right? It's all of Bruce's worst impulses and his worst assumptions, his right? So I get to explore that kind of thing between the two of them. And there's moments where the Batman Who Laughs will talk to Superman. There's a lot of scenes between Superman and Batman Who Laughs, and the Batman Who Laughs being like, listen, I'm him. So I know what he really
Right.
thinks.
He'll never tell you this, but.
He'll never tell you this, but this is what I think. You know, of all the tools in my utility belt, the best tool I ever had was you. You know, things like that, where it's like, you know, how easily I can manipulate you to get you to do what I want.
Okay.
You know, and so there is an antagonistic thing. So sometimes my favorite stuff to write is really the Batman Who Laughs and Superman, and the two of them. And there's a couple scenes where it's like Batman. Part of the challenge that Batman has had is that he's aware the Batman Who Laughs is him, right? To a certain extent, he is aware that it's him, and so there's a line in 3 where he's thinking, like, how do I outsmart myself? Well, I need to stop thinking like myself, and I need to start asking myself, what would Superman do? Not what Batman would do. What would Superman do? That's what I think like. And I know what the Batman Who Laughs thinks like, but neither one of us think like him.
Interesting.
Neither one of us think like him. So maybe to beat myself, I need to start thinking like him. And there's a scene in issue 1 where he's asking Clark, like, if I ever got out of hand, what would you do to stop me? You know, what would you do? And Clark's like, I'm sorry, I don't think like that.
Wow, sure. Of course he doesn't, yes.
Like, not in the way that you do, right? You know what I mean? Not in the way that Bruce does. Right. But there's a scene in issue 1 where he's talking about how, like, they go into the Batman Who Laughs Batcave, they find it. And it immediately, like, to Bruce, he looks around this terrifying Batcave. And he sees his own handiwork. He can still see himself among this horror, right?
Yeah.
But to Clark is like, no, when I'm inside your Batcave, like the first time you brought me into your Batcave, it was like I was inside your mind. And yes, there's a big computer, there's all this stuff, but you know what else I see? I see a giant penny. I see a giant T-Rex. I see a slew of Batmobiles, and I see these costumes. I see you on display, your victories and your failures.
Yes.
Like, it's basically like being inside of your mind, right? Like, and I see this person who is sentimental, and it shows to him, and he's explaining this to Bruce, of like, that's how I know you and the Batman Who Laughs are not the same person.
Interesting.
I can see it. Like, I can see this person you are by the things you surround yourself with. You are not like him at all.
Cool.
Yeah, getting to write a lot of scenes like that. Like, that's probably my favorite stuff to write is the two of them. And yeah, there's tension sometimes because they're going through something really challenging because they're having to make the decision or not of whether or not they're going to keep this secret, because the whole thing of the Batman Who Laughs has this plan to infect people and make them so they're possessed, and they're transformed into like the dark multiverse versions of themselves, so they become these horrific versions, like how he is. Like, he's the worst version of Bruce, so he wants to turn other heroes into the worst versions of themselves. And once Bruce and Clark are aware of this, the problem then becomes, do we tell anybody? And what if people were friends with other heroes who've already been infected and they're already working with them?
Wow.
It's like, it's Kurt Russell and Keith David at the end of the thing, right? Where it's like, I'm not sure if you can trust you can't trust me. We don't know if anybody in this building has already been turned. Thing. So the two of them are having this conflict of whether or not they should tell people. Like, should they bring in Diana? Should they bring in the Justice League? Should they tell everybody? And then what are the risks there? Are they endangering other heroes by involving them in this mystery? Are they by involving them in this case? So there is tension there, them going back and forth trying to make this decision of whether or not to tell people. And then there's a whole lot of action.
Well, that's good.
David Marquez is doing some
that's great, man, that Dave's drawing it. I'm thrilled to see him part of the DC universe and everything. That's wonderful.
Oh, yeah, that was a crazy one. So I was at Bendis' house the night before Thanksgiving. I went over there. It was like me, him, and Sid Humphries. Yeah. And we started having these conversations about artists. And I knew I was doing Batman and Superman, and he was doing... Gleason was already working on Young Justice, but I think there was something else coming up that Bendis was working on, and we just started having this conversation about artists. And he's like, well, who do you want to do? Who do you want to work with and collaborate with on Batman and Superman? And I was like, well, I have a few people here and there, but there's one I really want, but I know I can't get. And he's like, who? And I was like, well, David. I remember he was like, David who? And I was like, Marquez. And he was like, oh, yeah, David. And he was like, well, and I was like, listen, I know if he comes over, he's going to work with you immediately. And he's like, no, maybe not. Like, we don't know for sure when he's coming over, you know. He's like, but maybe not. He might not come over if he does come over, because they weren't sure if he was going to or not, because Mark wasn't up. They were like, if he comes over, there might be some time, because Brian is writing like 100 books, so there might be some time,
before Bendis is ready for it, sure.
If that's something they want to do, maybe this would work for him, And I was like, okay, and so a little bit after that, Brian mentioned it to him, and David and I are friends. We've known each other for a while too, and both, local Portland people. So I went over to his house, and I just pitched him everything. I was like, this is the story for Batman Superman, this is the story for the big mega story we've been working on the last few years. I gave him a whole spiel, and then once he was free, DC sent him copies of like everything to read, so he got to read Batman Who Laughs, so we got to read him everything, and then he was in, so it worked out. It was like, I couldn't believe it. Great. And when the pages, and I still couldn't believe it, and there's some stuff in there that's amazing. There's a scene in issue 2, well, now it's out there. The cover's out there. So you saw the Shazam got possessed. Now Shazam is this dark version of Shazam.
Oh, that's excellent. I haven't seen that cover. That's fantastic. Wonderful. Wow, there's your worst case scenario, man.
Yeah, so that's what it is, too. I try to tell you it was funny when they were thinking we were going to use really smaller characters. And there's a good variety in there, but we want to make sure it does feel... It's the Batman Who Laughs because it's strategic. Sure, He's Batman. So Batman is going to go out and you want to basically create 6 sleeper agents. Who are you going to pick? You're not going to pick... Joe Schmo, you're going to go out there, you're going to pick people could hurt the heroes and could actually do what you want. And so Shazam is one of them, and we have this cover that's out there now where it's him, and he's holding Batman and Superman like he just beat them. But there's a scene in issue 2 where he has Superman up in the sky, and him and Superman are fighting it out in the sky above Gotham, and Batman steals the Batman Who Laughs Batwing, and he flies it up. And Shazam is like, are you really going to come in with toys? And he just straight out rams the entire Batwing right into Shazam. Which, of course, does no damage to Shazam.
Of course not.
Completely wrecks the Batwing, but it looks awesome. Dave does this amazing sequence of it just no flinch, no sell, Shazam, and this Batwing just plowing right into him. It's awesome.
That's great.
It's an amazing page, but... Yeah, it's been awesome working on this book and working with David, and I'm really excited about it. Yeah, it comes out in August.
Cool.
I'm anxious and nervous, whenever number 1 is coming out, but I love writing it. I can't even believe I get to write this book. It's so wild. I don't know how this happens sometimes. We were talking about, before we started recording, the whole 10,000 hours
yes,
thing.
Yes, Malcolm Gladwell, the skill.
Yeah, I started, trying to write comics when I was in 4th grade, and... So, going to conventions and trying to show my little pitches to people and, going to San Diego Comic-Con. I've gone to San Diego Comic-Con every year since I was 14.
Wow. Hilarious. That's fantastic.
Yeah, every single year. I wouldn't even know what to do with myself if I didn't go for a year.
That's hilarious. That's great, man.
So I used to go for one day until, probably, I always go for one day. I always go for Saturday or Sunday until I was, in my 20s, and I could afford to crash down there somewhere. Yeah. A hostel or whatever, just get in the building.
I understand, absolutely, man.
To people, but I feel it's wild. If you had told me when I was in 4th grade that the characters you really like Superman, Batman, and Flash, that you get to write them now, I wouldn't believe it.
Sure,
I would. I'd be blown away by that I get to write these characters in these books. And yeah, it's crazy sometimes. I don't know, but I'm really thankful for it, and I love writing them. It's really fun writing those characters, and I really love that Jeff Loeb Ed McGuinness book. I read it about once a year. I just really like it. I don't know, that one was really good.
Agree.
And then it's
absolutely, man.
Turner, and then it's Pacheco, and then McGuinness came back around.
Jeff got those characters, and I think absolutely was the right guy at that time to do both guys. And again, it sounds like you're, again, from that same source material of understanding the differences between them. And it's the conversations. It's the way they perceive each other. And again, like you said, having Batman Who Laughs in there, it does add a different dynamic to it. And that, they can really get into things that they wouldn't be comfortable saying to each other.
They wouldn't talk about, but he presents those things and makes them question.
Sure.
And there's a part, I'm getting super into spoiler stuff or whatever, in the fourth
I don't want you to get in trouble,
in
man.
fourth
issue.
I think it's the fourth issue. In the fourth issue, Superman is attuned to people. Like he can hear Lois no matter where she is in the world if she says his name or calls for him, right? It's one of the things that Bendis does really well. Like Bendis does that thing right now in the book where it's that mob boss. I forget her name right now, but she makes it so like no one that works for her is ever allowed to say Superman. They're not allowed to say Kryptonite. They're not allowed to say Lois. You know what I mean? Because they know that if you say those things, Superman could hear you and he will tune into you and he'll show up.
Oh, very good.
Right? So I think no matter where Superman is, he can hear Lois. He can hear Jimmy's watch.
Absolutely.
He can hear things, right? He's tuned into Batman.
I would agree with that.
Like if Batman was ever in danger and said Clark would hear it, right? Here's the thing. Bruce and Batman Who Laughs, they're the same person. So that means that if the Batman Who Laughs is out there, and yes, his voice is different, he's crazy, but once they meet, once Superman and Batman Who Laughs actually meet, if Batman Who Laughs is, wherever he is in the world, if he starts talking to himself, you know who can hear him?
Superman. Yeah. He's on his radar. Yeah.
And you know who knows that is Batman Who Laughs. So there's parts in the fourth issue where Batman Who Laughs is just talking to himself on purpose.
Hilarious.
To Superman.
Hilarious. That's fantastic. That's a great idea.
And, so it's fun writing that where, like, Superman and Batman are in, like, they're in the shit. Like, there's the fourth issue is really tough, and they're up against a lot of stuff. And while they're in this moment of actual danger, going up against other heroes and being in a tough situation, Superman has to tell Bruce, be like, I can still hear him right now, and he's taunting us. He knows we're going to lose, and he's telling us we should admit that we're going to lose. That's the thing, right? Batman never loses. Batman never loses.
That's right.
And he's always going to win. But having a character that's like him, like the Batman Who Laughs, taunting him from afar and being like, this time you guys are going to admit. You two are going to admit you're going to lose this time. And you should know it. Like, there's a whole thing where he's telling them, like, you should know right now that this is the time. Like, you guys are going to feel it any minute now. You're going to feel this is the time you're going to lose. You're going to know. And, just taunting them from afar. And Superman having to relay that message to Batman. Having to be like, this is what he's saying to me now. I can hear him. It's a lot of fun writing those characters and this dynamic. But, and knowing that it's all building to this really big, crazy thing we want to do. I'm curious how it'll look like 5 years from now, or 5 years from now when someone looks back at this story that really starts with Dark Knight's Metal and sees how it was this big, crazy, massive thing. If they're going to see all the pieces 5 years from now, they're going to look back and be like, oh man, they really were telling this big, gigantic thing this whole time. But that's how I think, because James and I and Scott were all continuity nerds, particularly, especially James and I. We're very like DC guys. Cool. Scott is too, but I know that James and I are. It's a whole other ballgame for us, I think. But being able to tell this massive story with these characters, and we're continuity junkies, so we're always trying to find a place for everything we can and reference old stuff and bring stuff in. And Scott's really fun with that stuff too, because Scott's always trying to find ways to amp stuff up. And so even when me and James are like, we're thinking about this continuity thing, Scott will come around and be like, what about this continuity thing? And it's always like makes everything so much bigger and crazier than we initially came in with. And it's awesome working with these guys. And then we get Bendis and Tom and everybody in there and being able to just try and, you can see it right now here at the villain and some of the things we're building. But yeah, man, it's nuts, dude. I couldn't even imagine this a few years ago.
Yeah.
Like
because all the pieces weren't there. And now with Tom and Brian and you and everything, it's like it is a fuller boat and everything. I mean, James and Scott were already there making interesting stories and stuff. But no, I agree with you. I think, again, and not to discount any other current DC writers, but yeah, there's a very strong nucleus, and especially on the main characters in Justice League, where, I think the DC universe is in a very interesting place right now and about to get only more interesting with the seeds that you guys are laying out.
Yeah, you'll see, man. It's going to get really crazy. I think it's going to really surprise people. It's going to get nuts.
Attaboy. That's great, man. Seriously. No, I'm thrilled, man. And honestly, this is, like I said, a long time coming, and I've been dying to talk to you, and I appreciate you letting me go on majority about Flash and certainly Batman, Superman, and everything. So sounds like you got an interesting agenda coming up, Josh Williamson, and I.
Yeah, it's busy. It's busy, nonstop.
Well, I'm not going to see you in San Diego, but maybe I'll see you in New York. I don't know if you're going to New York.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, New York.
Right, cool.
Yeah, New York. I'll never miss San Diego and New York. Even if I retire from cons, I'll still find a way to show up to San Diego.
I got friends, and it's easier for me to drop hundreds to go to New York as opposed to thousands to go to San Diego. You know what I mean? So in terms of staying and stuff like that, I Airbnb'd it one time at 1 year, and I stayed at this very nice couple's place, young people, and I was in there, and especially I feel like an old man even calling them young people, but they're in their 20s, they were great, but they had no air conditioning, and it happened to be a particularly hot San Diego week. And I would wake up in a pool of sweat, and it was like in Rocky 2 when both Apollo and Rocky are on the canvas, and the canvas is just drenched with sweat, literally like a circle beyond my body of sweat. And I'm just like, oh my God.
I would be like, nope, we got to figure something else out.
No, they were incredibly kind, and they're like, oh, we're so sorry, it's never this hot, and I know it isn't, because usually San Diego, it's like the perfect weather always.
No, that's garbage. I lived in San Diego for a while, and it super gets hot in the summer.
You go. Well, I don't know. The 10 years I've been going to the Comic-Con, I think there were only maybe 2 or maybe 3 really bad like heat summers, and then again I was in a hotel or whatever. But yeah, that was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad. So it's all right.
No, I'll never skip that one.
But yeah, man. No. So in a couple of months, I hope to see you. And seriously, this is a great conversation, as I knew it would be. So.
Yeah, we'll talk again after Batman Superman is running, and then we can reconnect and continue the conversation.
Attaboy, I'm leaving it right there. Attaboy. Got to tell you, pretty psyched about Josh's plans for Batman Superman and what's coming down the road as well for Barry Allen and The Flash. Pretty neat stuff, and it was a pleasure talking to him. I look forward to touching base with him, hopefully before the end of the year, and getting an update of what's going on. Josh Williamson on today's Word Balloon. Also, Carl Kiesel, they had a great conversation with him. We reached back on some of his old DC work in the Superman offices and what happened during the death of Superman, and some great conversations. And also, Carl has a new graphic novel, a creator-owned concept that he has with David Hahn. It's called Impossible Jones. It looks amazing and very funny. Go to their Kickstarter page and check it out. And I hope you listen to that Word Balloon podcast from today as well, because it was a great conversation. So you got this one with Josh and also Carl Kiesel to give you something to listen to this weekend. And I hope you enjoy it here on Word Balloon. All brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. If you'd like to subscribe to Word Balloon, it's greatly appreciated. You can go to wordballoon.com and click on the Patreon ad there, or you can go directly to patreon.com/wordballoon. Is Word Balloon worth the price of a comic book a month to you? Is it worth $1 a month to you even? If you think so, I would appreciate the support. Thank you very much, League of Word Balloon listeners. And Word Balloon is brought to you by Aftershock Comics. Great books coming out, as they always have been. You're talking about things like Stronghold from Phil Hester, Tim Seeley's Dark Red, Animosity from Marguerite Bennett, A Walk Through Hell from Garth Ennis, Jimmy's Bastards from Garth Ennis, lots of Garth Ennis product actually, Dark Ark from Cullen Bunn, and Juan Doe, Baby Teeth from Donny Cates. Well, new stuff is on the way as well, like Joe Pruitt's horror anthology Shock, Cullen Bunn, another new book from him, Knights Temporal, Chris Sabella's Trustfall, and Matthew Klickstein's You Are Obsolete, only to name a few. Check them out. You can find out more information on these books at their website. You will find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on these books to order through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Thanks again for listening today. Man, it's been a great June, and even appreciate the response to a couple old episodes that I threw out there with conversations with Bendis and Robert Kirkman, talking about the Kirkman Manifesto. God, I can't believe it's been 11 years since Robert put out that video. And again, look at how the environment, the comic marketplace, has changed so rapidly in those 11 years. Carl Kiesel's, in fact, Impossible Jones is a great example of that. And certainly the independent work that Josh has been doing as well. Also, great to talk to Kelly Sue DeConnick. It's great to remind people of exactly what she was thinking as she debuted a new spin on Carol Danvers, and giving her the chance to graduate from Ms. Marvel to Captain Marvel. It's been a great year for Captain Marvel, and the movie is terrific, and I'm really glad that Kel has been recognized for her incredible contribution to the Marvel Universe. She continues now at the DC Universe with Aquaman. I'm looking forward to a new conversation with her in the weeks ahead, and once that happens, I will share it with you right here on Word Balloon. So until next time, thanks for listening. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2019.